That is right, Andrew. This is the Midnight Ocean, and you are listening to, I am your host, Jeff Norton, coming to you live from the great state of Florida and the nature's coast. Tonight, we're going to get on board, and we're going to sail off into the world of numerology. Welcome aboard for all of those midnight listeners out there. That's right. We got Chris Gogos is going to be joining us here in a few minutes. As I said, we're going to sail on off into the Midnight Ocean. But before we do that, let's take care of a little bit of house cleaning, keeping, whatever you may call it. If you're joining us for the first time on YouTube, I noticed that we picked up 7 new subscribers. Thank you for joining us. But if you are listening to the first time on YouTube, please make sure that you hit that ever so important subscribe button. It means so much to us. And if you're on Facebook, also type in The Midnight Ocean in the search bar. Join the Midnight listeners out there. That's right. Join it. I promise I'm not going to spam you. We're not going to send out cute little posters of kittens saying hang in there. It is only going to be about the show. Before we bring our guests, I did want to say one thing too about what's going on in North Carolina. I know a lot of people have a lot of opinions. I do, about what's going on in North Carolina. At the end of the day, though, we need to boil it down to this. Someone lost a husband, a father, and we lost a fellow American. That is right. At the end of the day, regardless of where you sit on the fence on this one, or even if you're on the right side or the left side of the fence, wherever that may be, you must always remember we lost a human being in that tragedy in North Carolina. And I hope that the officials can come together. I hope the people can come together. I hope we can come together and put an end to this nonsense. This senseless killing. No reason for it. We need to have a little bit more respect for the human being. We really do. And that goes hand in hand with what we were talking about last night. I had a great interview with Gerard Artson this morning. We're going to get that out there. We'll play that. It's just incredible. And it just seals the deal for me. At the end of the day, we lost a human being. And it's got to stop. It's just got to stop. But enough of that. I just want to get on with the show. We're going to shove off tonight with our very, very good guest, Chris Gogos. He is an alpha numerologist, personal profile futurist forecaster, occult historian. That's going to be interesting. I want to delve into that. Music, sound engineer, and audio producer. Oh, well, maybe he can give me some pointers as we work through our board issues. But a graduate of the Tobias Institute of Recording Arts and Sciences in Toronto, Canada, 1986, in sound engineering, arts management, and administration. He's starting working at a prominent Toronto recording studio as a music and sound design consultant specializing in business development, copyright, licensing, producing music, sound effects, Mac PC, audio file management software. His clients were some of the world's most prolific recording artists, prominent post-production facilities, universities, and corporations. Wow. Reminds me of my good old days at the good Middle Tennessee State University. So without further ado, I want to bring Chris on. And of course, I have so many questions for you, Chris. And the first one is, how do you go from being a music engineer, sound engineer, to a numerologist?
Well, first and foremost, I've always had interests going on at the same time from the time I was a teenager in my 20s. moving forward. And like a lot of people having many things on the go, you just keep them going.
Yeah.
And that's just the easy answer. But the more complicated one, like everybody else that I know in my life, we not only juggle all kinds of things, but we try to get better at them as we age and as we mature moving forward. But the study into, I guess, ancient history, the occult dimension of history, that was a particular fascination that got me when I was in high school, of all places, and it was a particular teacher that exposed me to some very interesting information, let's say alternative information of history. And I wasn't expecting it, but he said, yeah, you might find this interesting, and sure enough, I did. And it just was always with me. Now, interestingly, the connection between, I guess, arts and sciences with the, I guess, more hidden aspects of our collective past, there's more correspondences than you might imagine. And until you start doing the research yourself, you won't know it. And I was just completely taken aback at how rich the history of humanity is in those areas, specifically to do with music and arts in particular, and also the more, I guess, esoteric side of knowledge that we've had for quite a long time. It just wasn't taught to everybody way back, and for that matter, it's not readily available. At least when I was growing up. Now with the internet, geez, you can find out all kinds of stuff pretty quick.
Yeah.
But in fact, I was just going to make a bit of a joke and say one of my fascinations with alchemy as a modeling environment to try to understand the universe and the world, and use it as a modeling environment to help us learn all kinds of things from even from cooking. You know, I mean, I have a friend of mine, she's a great cook, and I always say that she's an alchemist because she can take the most boring ingredients and just whip them up into really tasty things, right? So alchemy can be used in all kinds of ways, right? I just happen to use them not only with the way I produce my audio content for my clients at this point, but I also have weaved in my vocational aspirations, which has always been the more occult side of my knowledge base. And alphanumerology, just to give you a kind of a heads up on it, numerology on its own is the study of numbers, but when you add alpha, it is the study of words and names. And that's why I had to blend the two and make it one, because it's the study of names and dates, or words, names, dates, and or birth dates. And in my case, when I do custom profiles for my clients.
Gotcha. So alpha, you're an alpha numerologist. Correct.
Yes, because there's a lot of people that call themselves just numerologists, and what they do is they simply look at the birth date of someone and say some basic number calculations of, say, the name. But I really drill down and go very granular, as I like to refer to it as, when I look at a person's name, because I don't just use their common or regular name. I go back and I look at the full original birth name that one was given, as well as the current name that is being used, along with the birth date. And with that, I create kind of like a musical score or a schematic, you know, that you can look at. And to me, it's like an X-ray, I'm telling you. I can see what I believe is a big picture of not only the personality of the individual, both what I deem to be like the fixed temperaments, but also the variable temperaments, the ones that will fluctuate in real time as, you know, people move forward in any given current period of time. And when you look at those two dimensions, the fixed and the variable, to me, it is giving me the whole snapshot of what I need to know before I start commenting on what I believe the certain personality aspects are of the individual, and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Okay. I understand now. And then, when you talk about alchemy, I'm thinking of the wizard hat, the guy in the dungeon or whatever, in the widget with the wizard hat on, and, playing, especially when you say the music, and being here in Florida, we automatically think of the wizard, the Mickey Mouse version of it. And I'm not saying Mickey Mouse, but that's when you said you were an alchemist, I was thinking of that. I'm like, are you in your lab doing brews and potions and lotions and all of those things? Or
well, it's funny. It's funny you should even bring that concept up, because if you went back into history, not that far back, kind of like pre-Isaac Newton days, or roughly around that time, what you'll find if you do the research is the stereotype of the curmudgeonly old figure in their basement or in their laboratory, with beakers and furnaces and heating sources and just things on the stove or something always going. That is actually a term that was associated to a stereotype of what was called a puffer, Puffer, and those were the people that were the chemical alchemists, the ones that were actually literally trying to mix all kinds of things and see what they would come up with. And in reality, those types of alchemists were definitely around, and they were definitely ones that were doing a lot of experimenting with substances and whatnot, and a lot of them got sick and killed themselves too, by the way. You can't be burning mercury for very long and inhaling that stuff before it starts to do a number on you. But before them, there were what were called the natural scientists, pre-Isaac Newton. In fact, a lot of people would say that Isaac Newton himself was a natural scientist. And in fact, I don't know if you've been aware of his recent history that has been uncovered about him, but it's absolutely stunningly fascinating. Were you familiar with the recent history on him?
Well, I knew that he was an alchemist, and he was looking at the golden, the golden apple of alchemy was actually making gold, lead, making gold from lead. And, it was very hidden though, because of the church at the time.
Sure, but absolutely. But in his heyday as a senior statesman for scientific rationalism, he became the head of the Royal Mint. If I'm not, I don't want to be speaking out of turn, but I think that's one of the places he wound up managing, being appointed by the monarchy at the time. And it was actually illegal to be going around saying that you could turn lead into gold, by the way, too. I think it was a capital offense way back. But before his rise to prominence, the natural magicians, the natural scientists, were the ones that were studying natural phenomena in the natural world. And those people were, without realizing it at the time, they had more of a kinship to our ancient ancestry who were doing the same thing, but maybe weren't as diligent at the documenting part that scientists are so fond of today. Like, we believe that everybody should just document everything, do your tests over and over again, and if it stands on some type of scientific first principles, and you should be able to repeat those processes over and over again and get the same result. And when you stop getting the same result, well, then all of a sudden everything you've just done is wrong, and you have to go back to zero again, right? So everything is only as true until it's not proven true, and then you're back to zero. So I think the real natural scientists were always doing that, and they're still doing that today. And I know I do that myself in my own small little world when I'm doing reports, custom reports for clients, and or when I'm doing my weekly audio cast, where I'm doing essentially a forecast, like general forecasts going into the next week.
Sure.
And trial and error is a funny thing, you have to lean on your experience, what works, and to just keep doing it until it breaks. And then you have to modify and fix and make your system better moving forward, because that's what clients demand, is they want you to be really good at what you do and to never lie to them and to never omit when you've made a mistake. And it's just all about accuracy. That's what I found. Everybody just wants accuracy.
So how do you, so we're talking about the forecasting part of it. So take us through the process. So I am Jeff Norton, and I'm going to retain your services. Do I come to you with a specific question? How does that, and I do apologize.
Well, first,
how does that work?
Sure. On a custom level, I do not require the client to tell me anything other than their original name, common name, and date of birth. Mm-hmm. I don't want to know if you are happy, sad, rich, poor, sick, healthy. I don't want to know anything. I do not want to know what you do for a living, how much stress you're under, or how easygoing your life is. Are you retired, or you're still working? Zero. And just to also let you know that ironically, I don't have any social networking accounts for a couple of reasons. I've been doing this for a long time, the profiling and the forecasting and stuff, and I have a very strict privacy policy. And it's just always been like that. It's inconvenient because I could be doing a lot better than I am in terms of building my practice and doing other things. But because of the strict privacy policy, I have to always foresee the interests of the end user more than my own. So in that regard, I handicap myself even more by knowing as less about you as possible. Even when it comes to the payment part, you deal with PayPal, you don't deal with me. Okay, I have to know your address, but that's just on the invoice, right? Mm-hmm. But I've had some people say to me, well, you could find out all kinds of stuff about me on Facebook, or, just doing some searching. Well, you know what? I wouldn't do that, because first and foremost, that goes against my own scientific type of testing, right? For starters. And two, it would be a breach of confidence, because I don't want someone to come to me thinking that I'm doing some sneaky stuff, trying to find out stuff about them, kind of like from the back door, or from some other thing. So what I always say to people is, listen, I'm going to put you in the queue, and I'll get to you when I get to you, because I have other people that I have to do in a first come, first served basis. But if you want, right off the cuff, I'll do a little sample for you, and I'll treat you with that same respect right now. So if you want, but you have to give me permission, you got to give me your birth dates, and we'll do it live right now, and you can give me your reaction right off the cuff and tell me what you think, okay? But all I need is the birth date and the full original name and the regular name. But you don't have to give me your full original name live on the air if you don't want to. You could email it to me on my site. I got that little email.
No, I don't care. The internet people know enough about me. I mean, my name is Jeffrey.
Okay.
And obviously my last name is Norton. Do you need my you need my middle?
I need a middle. Yes.
Okay,
yes,
so it's Wilson.
Wilson. Okay.
Yep.
Great. Okay, and what's your date of birth?
All right. So here you go. I'm gonna text that one to you.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, I gave you the option, right?
Yeah. Well,
you have to text it. Do an email. Send it on the email link on my site, alchemyworld.com.
Yep, I'll do that right now. And the reason being is because we do go in. My middle name, that's no big deal, because I actually use that, so people that know me.
That's cool. Yeah, I have a strict privacy policy, like I said. So do what you got to do, and we'll take it from there. And then
all those hackers out there going, darn.
Darn. Yeah, geez, we could have robbed his bank.
Yeah, I have. When you are in this business, I can tell you.
Tell me about it, yeah.
I can tell you
I know.
that you have to have every form of credit lock, everything. It's amazing how...
Well, this is so true, and this is why I take privacy so seriously as well, right? So we're all on the same page that way. Right.
I'm bringing it up right now, so hold on.
Okay. And while we're waiting, I'm going to actually just look at the some of the patterns and correspondences of your name, even without the birth date.
Okay.
Okay, because that's also a very, like I said, important thing. A lot of people, when they do astrology, they think initially that I'm an astrologer, and I always joke and I say, no, I'm not an astrologer. In fact, even if I didn't have the birth date, I could still do a, pretty reasonable character assessment based on the name. Mm-hmm. So do you give me permission to speak freely a little bit? I'm not.
Yeah, go ahead. I have nothing to hide. I've always said that. Like I said, when you're in this business, it's amazing what people find out, and it's funny because 80% of it's not true, and then the 20% that is true, you just go, I did that. I was kind of stupid.
Kind of silly, yeah.
So, and you should have that email by now.
Okay. All right. Well, the first thing that I'm going to look at here is the way you adapt to rapidly changing situations. Mm-hmm. First and foremost, I would say you're ruled by what I call the air element. So you have an above average capacity to adapt when something goes not according to plan. Now, as opposed to a lot of people, they fall apart when the plan falls apart, like they just can't cope with something that doesn't go according to plan. Okay, but you are a little bit more mentally agile in that regard, and that's to your credit, to your testament in that regard. Now, one other thing to bear in mind, and this has more to do with what I'm about to say now, with regards to your motivations. And motivations I define as the intrinsic inner person. Mm-hmm. It's more like the will of the individual. And we all got one. It's just a different character archetype. Yours is more along the lines of ruled by what I call the fire element. Very independent, extremely calm, emotionally speaking. And bear in mind, too, that when I say calm emotionally, I don't mean somebody that necessarily does not feel. I'm simply saying someone who is in control of their emotions, not like someone who ignores what they feel. In fact, it's the reverse. Someone who feels very deeply and very intensely, but they choose to kind of cloak it with a steely exterior. But in this sense, it's in the context of your motivations. So it would be very difficult for someone to kind of take you off your game once you're kind of locked in onto a particular coordinate. Mm-hmm. So I could say in your ancestral lineage, there was some very independent-minded people, and you've inherited their DNA, so to speak, and it's literally running through your behavior in real time. And the beauty about this type of motivational force is you're also intrinsically very disciplined. And, I have to say, a lot of people suck at being disciplined. They just are not good at it. They might talk a good game about being, on top of this and on top of that. And I'm not trying to inflate your ego or say you're better than anybody, but when you decide to become disciplined at something, you're all over that thing, and you're not going to let it go until you master it. And even then, you're going to keep, refining it, because for someone like you, it is all about skill and discipline. And that old saying of lead or get out of the way?
Yeah.
That is something that I really believe you intrinsically are hardwired with your willpower to actually keep you going every day.
So, Chris, I want to stop you there because we are coming up on a break. But I do want to say that is something that drives Sandy nuts. That when I want to do something, I go full bore. If it's skydiving, if it's sailing, if it's whatever, I have to know everything there is to know about it. And I don't stop until I'm an expert. And I will go to the ends of the earth and spend whatever resources, i.e. money, that it takes to get that knowledge. So that's interesting that you say that about that. But we're gonna take a quick 4-minute break. When we get back, we're gonna speak with our very special guest, Chris Gogos, is joining us all the way from the great country. Yeah, that's right, not state. Some of us think it's a state, but the country of Canada. My favorite place. When he gets back, I'm going to ask him about old Timmy Hortons. I'm sure he's maybe spent a few days there. My favorite restaurant, coffee shop.
This is the Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network. Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network.
That's right, Andrew. I am Jeff Norton. I am your host of the Midnight Ocean radio show and a podcast. You can listen to us live every weeknight from 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or on the web 24/7 at www.themidnightocean.com. Wow, what a ride. What a great cruise tonight. Stars are bright. Moon is out. It's going to be a really entertaining. I hope you guys are enjoying the conversation that we're having with Chris Gogos, Alpha numerologist. But if you're joining us for the first time, I will say, please, on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. That's important. And also, if you are on social media, join us. Come on over. Join the club, Midnight listeners. Just type in The Midnight Ocean in the search bar there at Facebook, and it will take you right to our page. If you would like to become a Midnight listener, type in Midnight Listeners. That is Midnight Listeners, all one word, and join the group. I promise I won't spam you. You have my word that I won't do that. But right before we were so rudely interrupted, we were speaking with our very special guest, Chris Gogos, is joining us from the great country of Canada. And, hey, Chris, I got to ask, because people that listen to the show know that I love Tim Hortons coffee. Have you been known to visit Timmy Hortons?
Yeah, sure. We refer to it as Timmy's.
Timmy's, yep.
And, all year round, that place is just rocking all the time. Even in the winter when it's like 30 below and the snow is not, the roads haven't even been plowed yet. You go to any Timmy's out in the rural part, not even in the city, but just anywhere. Yeah. And that place will be busy. Yeah. All the time.
Oh, I have their coffee shipped to me. I'm in Toronto quite a bit, and whenever I'm there, I got to have my Tim Hortons, and then but I just found out though that they have opened up a Tim Hortons here in Tampa, Florida, of all places.
Well, I'm not surprised because you have a lot of Canadians that go there, and they're probably always missing Timmy's. Yep. And it's a certain kind of a smell too in their coffee. Yeah. It's an aroma that is just unmistakable. It's a particular blend in a roast that I think they guard like, Kentucky Fried Chicken or something. But it's quite the favorite up here for sure.
Every night I tell my audience, if you're within 500 miles of a Tim Hortons, is well worth the diversion to go up there and get yourself a coffee and a Danish.
Yeah. I think so too.
That's it. And I have to say, it's funny. So YouTube out there, no, I am not sponsored. Some of the guys in the chat room were going, Tim Hortons sponsorship coming soon. No, I am not sponsored by Tim Hortons.
A little Timmy's plug, yeah.
Timmy's plug. I did reach out to them, though, to ask for permission to use their logo and everything to make sure, we got to keep it legit. So even I do have my Tim Hortons mug. I'm not drinking out of it. I've got my Carnegie Mellon university.
No, they're very, they're very involved in the community. Yeah. And when people reach out, don't be surprised if, they respond and, cause they have very great corporate communications and all that stuff. So it's all good.
And, it's funny. I tell our listeners down here, literally, there are probably, if you took all of the McDonald's and the Burger Kings here in the United States, that's how it is with Tim Hortons. You have one on every street corner. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They even have little small kiosks in malls because a lot of times people just want a small selection of something. It doesn't have to be a big selection. It's just the stuff that they know everybody will repeatedly buy all day long.
Yeah.
So
it's good stuff. I love it. All right. So enough of that. Let's get back. Enough about that. Let's talk about me.
Yeah, it's all about you,
Let's
Jeff.
talk about me for a little bit.
Okay. All right. Well, here, let me get back onto this analysis here because I left off speaking of the motivational character temperament that I believe is in play in your personality. And just in a quick recap summary, I think in your heart of hearts, you are a natural leader. And again, I'm not saying this to inflate your ego or to put you on a pedestal, but some people simply have what it takes to be a natural leader, and I think you're one of them, but you probably hide it. You don't want to make it such a big deal, and it's not even about being a leader. For you, it's about zeroing in and being able to discover what the best idea is to something or the most appropriate solution to a problem. Sometimes, regardless of where it might come from even, because this is stuff that they try to train into people on the corporate side. And I've had many conversations with executives over the years where I say, you can spend all the money you want to develop leadership talent, and you might be successful in some small way, but why not just activate the people that are already in the ranks of your organization that are pretty much already in the know of your corporate culture. They know the products or the services. The clients know them. They know the clients. And just identify those people that are already natural leaders but don't want to flaunt it or to use it in ways that are destructive. Because let's face it, there's a lot of leaders out there in the world, literally in every parts of society, that they think and act like leaders, but they really don't have the real stuff to back it up. And that's why things fall apart, because you don't really have the most appropriate types of leaders for the job. But just to recap the type of leader, because there's different leadership styles, and yours again has got more to do with being of the calm, reserved type who prefers your own skill and discipline to get you by. Not necessarily someone else's where you're going to ride on their coattails, that kind of thing. So it's a very well-developed leadership trait, and you have it in a good spot, and you've got it in reserve as well to help you back that up. So I would be very assertive in saying that you definitely are also an innovator as well, but you probably don't call it that. Now, mind you, when I go to another category now that pertains to public image, the public image is the version of ourselves that we project on first impressions made when we're dealing with people. And we all have a first impression we make. We may not like it. We may not even know what it is. But with practice and experience and, interacting with people, you will see how you are perceived by others. And in your case, you're actually very fortunate in that you're also perceived as a leader as well. So there's a congruency, in this regard, whereas a lot of people are not congruent. What they project is not what they're motivated by. Therefore, could be a potential disconnect within that individual. And that's not to say that everybody should have the same motivations and the same public image. But in your case, you're actually fortunate in that you do. So the way you would probably utilize this to your advantage is to simply stay focused on being disciplined and very skillful. And if you're ever going to lean on anything, make sure it's your own skill and your own discipline. And then you'll never really go wrong when you're even interacting with people, because what they see is what they get. And for you, it's just a double win. Now, can I go on to one other category?
Yeah, let me turn the microphone on here. So find something negative.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
You want something negative?
Give me something negative. I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear all good stuff. I want to give me something. Give me something evil.
Let's pretend let's pretend that I'm your accountant now, and I'm discussing liabilities. Okay, because this is the way I talk when I speak to people on my audio recordings. I say, okay, you don't want the discussion of the assets, character assets or strengths of character. Fine, let's zip through and talk about the liabilities, the things that could be also characterized as your dark side or your shortcomings or the things that you have to pay back. And usually it's a character deficit or like a Shakespearean character flaw. Okay, but I won't call it the dark side of the individual. It's just like some idiosyncrasies that you got to sort out. Here's the first of the two. Even though you've got skill and discipline in a good way for things that you want to be a part of and to focus on, one of the things that might ironically undermine you when you're not really paying attention is if you fail to do things in a very boring, systematic, routine, almost like toil and drudgery type of manner. And I'll tell you, there's a lot to be said for whipping something into a systems-oriented routine. Now, a lot of people might think that's boring as hell to even say something like that, but I'll tell you, for someone like you, it isn't going to be big picture stuff that screws you up. It'll be if some system or routine is not functioning and you haven't been paying attention and you have not been doing that preventative maintenance thing, that's when something is going to screw you up. And you're going to catch yourself afterwards and say, because of that, because of some corrupted file on my hard drive, that's why my system blew up, or, my, this doesn't work and it screwed up all this other stuff that I had going on. So it's important for you to be very low-level organized, okay? And to see a job well done, even if you're doing boring stuff. Like, I'm talking like watching paint dry kind of boring stuff, right? Where it seems to be taking forever to fix a problem. And a lot of linear time is going by, and it's just like, oh my God, how much longer do I have to wait for this? But I would say that's not even as a potentially serious threat to creating risks in your life as this next thing that I'm going to talk about. And this has to do with managing details, particularly to do with financial stuff. Now, you could be a good money manager. You could manage details on a fundamental level pretty good. But let's say you're not staying on top of all the current updates of information. And I mean right across the board, not only with finances, but with anything. If you don't make the effort to put in time to stay organized in the information department, things are going to cause you problems and you will compromise yourself and the things that you were working so long and hard and diligently towards achieving and to mastering. So now you might say, well, Chris, doesn't that apply to everybody? Yeah. However, there's some people, some of my clients, they're so over the top organized, they're like almost like military organized, okay, where they not only know where everything is, they know where everything is going to be 4 months from now. And they've got contingencies upon contingencies in the event that they've compromised themselves from some unknowable thing. Right? Now, so I would say for you to be not finding yourself in some weirdo situation that's going to cost you time, money, and resources, like a problem or a bunch of problems to fix, you got to really embrace that not only, and I'm sure you've done this, but that old hardcore work ethic where you accept things as they are, even if you don't like certain things, and just master the real boring aspects of your work, whatever they are. And, that's just one dark side. So
well, it's funny that you said that because I'm a very smart man. Let me tell you, and I don't want to sound like Trump.
I get that.
And let me tell you why, because I happen to fall in love and be with the person that completely balances me out. I rule by chaos. And when it comes to finances and certain aspects of my life, I am a high level guy, and I have Sandy. She is my business partner, and she's my partner, my business partner, everything. She is the finance person because I'm not even allowed to have a credit card. I have to go to her. Now, granted, Sandy doesn't work, and she does. Well, let me say, she works at home. She works, and it's funny when we're doing applications or whatever, people go, well, where do you work at? And she goes, I manage him. And that is a full-time, that's a full-time job.
Well, look, I was just going to interject and tell you one other thing, not so much about your dark side, but what I call the best of version of an individual. And I will touch on the potential negative dynamic of it. But before I do that, I want to talk about the most potent version of yourself. And in this case, I think you are very impartial, to your credit, and you're also very fair. So for you, and you are actually learning about those very particular temperaments in another category as well. So what I think you will probably wind up experiencing more so than not is a sense of innate justice and balance with people, everybody, like platonic or intimate. It doesn't really matter. For you, you know when something is fair and when it's not, when it's in balance versus when it's not in balance. And it's not beneath you to go and maybe seek outside, not intervention, but assistance or cooperation or help, and to be open about it. And you just proved it right now by just saying what you just said. So I actually appreciate that, because that actually validates your profile to an extent. Even if you didn't tell me that, I would have gotten to that point. But very impartial, and you're very serious too when you recognize some injustice somewhere. And I can almost see how you might get on a personal level when you realize someone has done either you wrong or someone you know wrong. And once you figure out what the facts are, I think it would be very difficult for you to not have some viewpoint that you would probably need to get across to someone in a civil, polite kind of a way, but to get it across, I think you definitely would need to do that.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah. No, this is, I'm sitting here listening to this, and, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm trying to look at the areas in which I can trip you up and say, well, that's not, but I have not, I'm just being just open and honest, because I think you're being honest with me and I need to be honest with you and stuff. And I'm looking for the little chinks in the armor. And I haven't found them. And I don't know if it's because, and that's why I wanted you to go to the negative, because, people like to hear good things about themselves, right? And that's just human nature. And so let's go to the negative side. I want to focus on the negative side because. Okay, I get to pick. Yeah, go ahead. Go.
I get you. Then you know what? Because you are giving me some permission and latitude to actually go and explore the dark side.
Come on.
I will Luke, I will do that here.
Luke, I am your father. Let's go to the dark side.
Okay, there's one component here, and this is in what I would call the emerging temperament with regards to one's vocational inclination.
Sure.
And what I'm about to tell you now is something that's been in the making for a long time. Now, lucky for you, that thing I just spoke of with regards to impartiality and being fair and all that, that's still in play. But you've got that reinforced in this next category. So what that tells me very clearly is that you're probably, as you get older, you're probably going to get way more serious about all kinds of things. But there's going to be one interesting development in your character, and it's going to be along the lines of being a what I would call not emotionally managed, but very aware of the role that emotions can play in one's life. And in your case, you will probably, and I'm not saying that obviously you're without feeling and you don't know how to perceive people emotionally and what they're really trying to say, regardless of the words they're using. Because let's face it, a lot of people say one thing, but they feel something else. Correct. Well, I think you're the type of person that can completely interpret accurately what someone is emotionally trying to get across, right? And you've probably spent a little bit of time in your life catching yourself when you've realized that you can do this. And it's not something that everybody can do. Okay, you might think, well, everybody surely can learn to do this as they get older with experience, and I'll tell you right now that that is not the case. There's a lot of people that absolutely don't know how to do this. And I think you do. And one way you could perfect it even more is to learn how to make assessments and decisions that have more to do with retreating into your emotional center and to not allow yourself to be deceived by what you see, if that makes any sense. Because a lot of people will get convinced of something based on what they see with their eyes, okay? And let's face it, nowadays, I mean, I go up and look at a YouTube video, and I can't tell if I'm looking at a real UFO or someone that's been photoshopping something, or if it's a rendered fake thing, right?
Yep.
I'm not that good. I never took cinematography, and I can't tell the difference anymore. It's like it's just all possible to me, right? If I look at a visual image, but someone like you, I think you're a little bit more discerning with those in that finer realm of emotional perception. So I'm going to encourage you to never accuse yourself in your darkest hours of ever being insensitive or not feeling, because if you do cloak your emotional side, not only to keep the peace, but you don't want to freak people out, and you certainly don't want them to see you ever get angry, because that's not cool, and it would show that you've lost it, and you're not someone that could easily lose it emotionally. I'm telling you that. It would be it would be something beyond what my capabilities are to know what it would take to set you off, because you are very much in control of your willpower and your mind. But as you get older, it's very important that you preserve and protect your peace, okay? Not only peace of mind, but what you treasure that gives you contentment, these kinds of things, right? Also bear in mind, as you get older, you're going to be very good at reading a room. Like if you were ever in a meeting with a bunch of people, I bet you would be one of these types that could immediately and accurately perceive what the pulse of or the tone is of a meeting and what everybody's really believing to be true. Even with all the political correctness that goes on, where people actually have to hide or not say what they really mean or feel, right? Because there's a lot of that going on. Self-censorship, I guess, is a more technical way to describe it. And I think you could pierce that armor like immediately.
I have zero tolerance for self-censorship. Zero. I've been known, I've sat in rooms with high-ranking government officials, CEOs of corporations in my other job, and I've told them flat out they're full of BS. I'm that guy. I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with it, because I tell them part of my contract is that you might not like what I tell you, but what I do tell you, you can believe that it is the truth.
Excellent. Okay, perfect. So there's no reason that you should ever have stomach problems or ulcers. Because I tell you, I've had people, and I'm not a doctor, okay? I don't want you to think I'm a medical intuitive or whatever that phrase is, but I can tell you there's been many times where people that are, for example, the exact opposite of being emotionally integrated, what they wind up doing to themselves is giving themselves some pretty major problems as a result. Because if somebody can't emotionally express how they feel to a friend or to a loved one, this is a problem. Okay. And if you're at work and somebody's paying you money to do a job, and now you gotta kind of bite your lip and not tell them what you think or what you feel as well now, well, what the hell? I mean, you're not getting your money's worth from your colleague, for starters, and you're just creating a bad tone, and it's just not a good way to be. So I'm happy that you actually responded the way you did, because that again validates that one category as well. Like
I said, it is in my agreements that I will tell you the truth. exactly how I feel. And I literally write it in my consulting agreements in my day job, because I have been known to blow CEOs of corporations up, major CEOs and government officials up, because I tell them they're full of BS. So, and we're going to talk about it. When we get back, we're talking about a very special guest, Chris Gogos. I'm going to throw him a curveball, though. Hang in there when we get back, because I am going to share something with him and see what he does with this one. But you're listening to the Midnight Ocean Radio Show and Podcast. Join us in about 4 minutes. We're going to be back.
This is the Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network.
My fellow Midnight Ocean listeners, you're listening to the Midnight Ocean Radio Show and Podcast. I am your host, Jeff Norton. You can find us here every weeknight from 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or on the web at www.themidnightocean.com. I'd like to welcome Christy Sentinel in the chat room. I think we got a few more. Spitfire's joining us tonight. Wow, guys. I'd like to say welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. We had 7 new subs today on the YouTube channel. I want to say thank you very much. If you're listening to the show for the very first time, we ask that you please, especially on YouTube, go out there and sub us. Subscribe, in other words. That helps us get our show out to the masses. Talking about news media, I don't know if you guys saw this latest WikiLeaks posting that Assange did, but even conservative-based TV shows host Bill O'Reilly and the ilk like Bill are meeting with Hillary Clinton or shill. That's right. I don't care who you vote for or who your candidate is. What I don't, and this just goes to show you that mainstream media is in on the fix. They're on the fix. And it is so important that shows like our show is out there. And that's why I will always have the Midnight Ocean. This will always, until the government takes me off the air or until the good Lord calls me home. But I'll make sure that we have a plan for that as well, because I think it's very important that now that we're starting to see even mainstream media, shows that have a certain bent or a certain genre, you're starting to see them even be a shill for the New World Order. And it's just disturbing. But what do we expect? So, as promised, though, I'm not going to take up our gracious guest time with that rant, Chris Gogos. But we were talking about, I'm having Chris. Chris is an alpha numerologist. And we were talking about the good things. So I wanted, Chris, you were going to the bet. Now I'm going to throw you a curveball. Okay. Right. I in full disclosure, I have one thing that is a bad thing. There's one particular element of me that I have to get under control. And it's
okay. Don't tell me. Okay,
I'm not going to tell you, but I'm telling you, there's one thing. I'm going to see if you can dig it out.
Okay. Well, I'm going to pick out what I call a super deficit character potential flaw. Right?
Okay.
A potential character flaw. And when I combine the two temperaments that I spoke of, the one potentially for at the low level to if you avoid doing the routine repetitive stuff to fix systems, you have to learn to embrace hard work at the most boring level for the sake of systematizing stuff that you want to work towards achieving, right? A lot of people find great discomfort in doing boring, routine, repetitive things. So first of all, you got to learn to embrace that. I mentioned that. Second thing is you got to be overly organized, not regular or average organized, but overly organized, and find ways to do that, whether you do it alone or you delegate. And you told me you delegated to your significant other. So that's cool. But when I squish those two together and I get a composite archetype, I'm thinking here, okay, how can I say this in a nice way without offending him? No,
You're not going to offend me.
No, I just said that in a funny kind of way.
Oh, okay.
Really, I think at its most basic level, your super deficits, character flaw is in the area of, if you make something that's serious into something frivolous and you don't take it serious when you should, you might be skating on thin ice and scatter yourself way too thin in all kinds of areas, like the old adage of too many irons in the fire.
Correct.
And secondly, over and above that, and I find this to be quite odd the way I'm going to say it, knowing what I know we're doing right now in real time. You're hosting your own show, and I'm a guest on your show. In a strange way, I think you were, and I say this so respectfully, okay, I think you probably felt socially awkward when you were younger. And I'm thinking, for the life of me, a guy that's hosting his own show, he's, extroverted, he's talking to people out there. How can someone like him possibly be socially awkward in his younger years? And this might be a way that you're transmuting that and making it work for, not against you. And it's a pattern that I have seen with people over my life. So I just find it kind of odd, but yet not odd.
Let me share something. I'm going to interrupt you, and let me share something. You hit it right on the head. Number one, I always viewed myself, and I can say this because I've grown and I'm working on it. Always viewed myself as being less than, right? One of my favorite songs is Pink's song called "Less Than Perfect." I love that song. I love that song. And because of that, I'm just being brutally honest. This is, you're being honest with me. I'm going to be honest with you. And I'm just going to share it with a few thousand, if not hundreds of thousands of people, right? In the near future, get it out there on the airwaves, because this radio show is therapy for me. I get so much from this. Now, people that know me, number one, because I felt less than normal, I just didn't feel right in my own skin. That led to a couple things. Number one, grandiosity. I was grandiose in the sense that things were always larger than what they actually were. Right. I can tell you stories that, I love my mom and dad to death, and they're still alive. Love them to death. But I always felt like, because I had that social inadequacy, that, I would say there was times where when I talked about my dad, well, he was a doctor. My dad's not a doctor. He served his country honorably as a soldier in the United States Air Force. But there were times where I felt less than perfect to other people. And so I grandized. That was number one. Number two, and then, that led to me getting involved in drugs and alcohol at a young age. And I don't have a problem talking about this because this is all part of my ministry now. This is who I am. And I got in trouble, and to the point to where I had to go and get fixed. I had to go and detox and get cleaned up and everything. And I realized that it didn't, I was sober, didn't do any drugs. I've, 30 something years of being sober. Well, drug free. I will drink a beer here or there, but I don't get drunk. I don't, that's just not me anymore. But I fell into that trap of self-medication. And then the last thing is now for me is an eating disorder. I use food as a comfort, the Oprah Winfrey kind of thing. And what I have found is that doing this, and when you say kind of like an introvert, I am. I will, Sandy, you will never know it because I'm on the radio and I do this show. Mm-hmm. I always say I hate people. And not that I hate people, because I am fascinated by people. I love people's story. And that's what I love about this show, because I get to interact with people. When I say I hate people, I don't like being around people because I'm self-conscious of my physicality. I'm a big guy. I'm like Shrek. I literally am like Shrek. I mean, I'm 6'5", and I'm huge. I'm bigger than most football players, professional football players. So I don't like social scenes. I don't like being in social gathering because I do feel awkward.
Interesting.
And that is the Jeff Norton deepest, darkest secret right there. I don't have a problem sharing that, but I have found that doing this show, number one, allows me to interact with people, which I think is important because every night I get to talk to a new guest and I get to learn from them. And so I enjoy that. Number two, it helps me, how do I say? It helps me, feel a part of something bigger than myself. Instead of me dwelling on, me all the time, I get to dwell on other things. I get to participate in the ethos of life.
I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
In fact, I would add one component that I think you switched from one area to another. And I'm just going to say that I don't think it's about hating people, and I'm not trying to put words in your head.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to tell you. Remember, I was telling you about the emotional perception capability.
Sure.
Okay. A person like you, even though you probably don't describe it the way I just described it, emotional perception, you can pick up on the feelings of people whether you want to or not.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But just like you can pick up when someone's BSing you, for starters, that's one thing. You can also probably perceive when someone is really in a good place, where they're happy and content, and you can pick that up too. But imagine now, forget about the BS or the contentment part. Imagine when you come into contact with somebody that's actually toxic. Okay. And, you could be at the mall, you could be anywhere, and you'll bump into somebody, or it's just something.
Yep.
And something about that person will be almost like a type of poison. You know what I mean? And you'll get a sample of it and you'll go, wow, I really don't like this energy. You might not even describe it the way I just said. And that's when a part of you probably goes, you know what? I hate people.
Yeah.
What you do is you hate those kinds of people.
Yeah. No,
right?
it's not.
And it's a repelling. It's a protection statement.
Yeah, it's not that I hate people. I love people. I mean, obviously, you can't do this type of show and communicate with people.
Exactly.
I love people in a sense because I think everybody has a show. But I don't like crowds of people because there's two things. I think part of it is my own self-consciousness because here I am. I'm a big dude. I'm imposing. I mean, when I travel on the airlines and everything, I always order extra seats. I've had people come up to me, airline. Here's an example. I've had people that come up to me on the airline and say, well, Mr. Norton, and I'm like, look, even if I could fit in your 22-inch seat, that's there now, my shoulders are broad. I am built like a lineman. I actually came back from Puerto Rico, and on the plane was a NFL offensive player, very well known, he played for he plays for Miami Dolphins. And he looked at me and he said, who do you play for? And I'm like, I don't play for anybody. And he goes, are you kidding me? And he's like, oh my God. He goes, you're huge. He goes, and this is a guy he plays center for the Miami. He's a center for the Miami Dolphin football team. And he's looking at me and he's looking at me. He's like, who do you, because we go to Puerto Rico about the same time that all the NFL players go, after the season. Most of them, they go down there and hang out. And so he naturally thought I was a football player. He's like, who do you play for? And it's like, I don't. And I mean, I'm just a big dude. And I've had them come up to me in the airlines and call me and say, well, and it's like, I always order. If I don't go first class, I buy the whole row because I don't like people on top of me anyways, but I'll just buy out all 3 seats on the plane because I just like that comfort level, but I am a big guy. It's not that I hate people. It's just that you're right. I don't. And the other thing too is when I am in crowds, and it's weird that you say that, when certain people touch me, I get like a charge.
Well, this is it.
Okay.
See, most people don't recognize the emotional realm well, okay? They really don't. They say they do, but they don't, because if they did, they wouldn't get ulcers or stomach problems. And I've had this conversation so many times in my life when I've had, and again, I'm not a doctor, okay? I'm just stating this, but those people that are emotionally repressed, that are self-censoring their words and they don't express how they think or feel, they usually have physical problems. And who the hell wants to have physical problems because of that, right? So in your case, I think you are more advanced, as I said, in the emotional perception area. So regardless of what your physical size is or how much you weigh, and if you feel socially awkward, I mean, that is a valid perspective, right? However, and you're sorting that out in your own way and time, but the emotional communication part is very important to note here, is that if you say to me, Chris, I tell you, there's been some people that when I shake their hands or when I, we're in a lineup or something and there's this transference of energy, that's what I'm talking about. And if it's a nice feeling, you'll go, geez, this person seems like a very nice individual, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to, wow, there's something really toxic about this person and I can't explain it. I don't even want to think about it or continue even giving it any more time, but it stays with you. And this is why you have to be more prioritizing how you feel about things, more so than you might have otherwise believed. And it's a hard thing to measure. Don't take it lightly, what I'm saying. It's a very difficult thing to measure, but your feelings will never steer you in the wrong direction. Okay. And that's why I say to you, it's important to never make decisions based on purely what you are seeing with your eyes, because it's easy to deceive people. Even the most gifted people that are on top of their game, that have highly developed ESP, and I've come to know a lot of people that are sharp in that intuitive realm in more ways than you can imagine. And even those people have said, you know what, I've been fooled by what I thought was true. And it's only sometimes when they close their eyes and they do a double take on the inside do they discern and really know what is actually true in what they're perceiving emotionally. So don't ever underestimate the power of your feelings, because they'll never let you down.
Cool. Yeah, wow. You hit it. You hit it on it. I was seeing if there, the self-conscious aspect of myself was going to come out.
Yeah, well, the socially awkward thing, it's funny with creative people in their mature life, they usually do things like what you're doing. That's why I felt a little like some trepidation thinking, geez, I hope he doesn't take it the wrong way, the way I'm saying it. But here you are validating it again. And, if you didn't do this, you'd probably be one of these types that would learn a second or third language. You know what I mean? Some way, shape, or form in someone's maturity, they find a way to transform the social awkwardness, however it was brought to be in the first place. And they actually do become extroverts, but balanced ones at that, where they don't go to the extreme to become embellishers or superficials or gossipers, that, because that's an extreme version that it has its place in society, but people get in trouble when they do that, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So but this is very fascinating, your chart, and you given me the permission to talk about it live like this. That's very cool.
Look, we ask. It's only fair because we've had people that come. We talk about some, we talk about paranormal stuff here on the show, but we also we've had people on here who are victims of sexual abuse and things, and so it's only fair that I can't hide behind the golden microphone. I mean, if I ask someone to be open and honest with me, I have to be open and honest with you. And like I said, that's part of my therapy. Now, granted, there's a lot of therapists out there who say, well, you don't want to say that in front of a couple thousand people. And I don't care, because it's the way I looked at it. It's my ministry. It's my example. Say, hey, look, I have these defects, these character flaws, but I can change. And this is how I changed. And
well, I think it's fantastic that you're disclosing that, because that gives you another air of credibility when you're dealing with people moving forward, when they might feel reluctant to maybe share something with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now they will. So this is all good. I was also going to tell you sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
Your train of thought.
No, that's fine. This is a conversation. So this is not,
okay.
Look, we have thrown out the broadcast handbook. This is not an interview. This is a conversation. So think about it as two friends talking and a couple thousand people that are listening.
People just listening. Okay. Well, here, I was also going to share with you, everything I've spoken about your report up to this point is what I would call the fixed fundamentals of your personality.
Sure.
And it's the pillars that the rest of your personality is built upon, right? Because we all have some idiosyncrasies, some quirks that we display and express over time that are more of a minor import. They're not as major as the fixed ones that I've just discussed right now. However, there's also what I call a forecasting or predictive analytics part of what I do. And ironically, years ago, this is the version that people wanted me to do exclusively. It's just the forecasting. They don't want to know about their personality. And you wouldn't believe how many times I'd have people say to me, I don't want to know about myself.
Yeah.
I just want to know how to make more money, how to find that special someone, and I want to know when I'm going to die and have health problems. Correct. This is what people would say to me up front, and I used to laugh at that, but I don't laugh at it anymore, because I realize these are, everyday normal things that all of us are concerned with, right?
Yeah.
Health, wealth, and happiness, and I get that. But I always say to people, look, before I do a forecast and I do a look-see into the predictive analytics part of your profile, and before I'm going to do that, I got to know what the fixed fundamentals are and what I'm going to build the forecast on top of, because I have to be responsible when I'm making statements to a client, and I'm not going to just whimsically say something to titillate you or to get you all excited, and I don't want you to front load the forecast by telling me a bunch of stuff. I can't tell you how many times I've had people send me, and this is way back, where they'd send me like a list. It was a wish list of things that they wanted, and I keep telling them, look, I'm not like a magician or a genie that's going to grant all these wishes and give you this like super magical strategy and formula. But you know what? I get that people have wants and desires, but the forecast part is really what I want to drill down now with you, with your permission, and to tell you a recent trend in the past, very recent, like in the last, I don't know, you're an October baby, right?
Yep.
And I got to bear that in mind here with what I'm about to say, but I'd say plus minus, since your last birthday moving forward, you've definitely been on an upswing in the happy, optimistic department of life. But interestingly, at exactly the same time, concurrently, like simultaneously, you've also had this, I call it the burn the candle at both ends mentality. And it's probably still in play. But if I knew you last year, I would have said to you, Jeff, hey, listen, it's good that you got all these things going on and stuff, and it's good that, your imagination is more active at nighttime or whatever, and that you just, you might like nighttime better, and that's okay, but you better get your sleep. And isn't it funny, when we spoke earlier today, you told me you did an interview earlier today, so it's interesting. Now I'm piecing it a little bit together here, and I did have a little bit of knowledge. I have to show you that I am aware of what you told me this morning. And I thought, okay, so when does this guy sleep? If he's doing work at weird hours, like I hope he's getting his hours in for sleeping, because you're not superhuman. And You can be your own worst enemy
Hey,
at nighttime.
Hey,
if you
Chris,
don't get
talk about nighttime. Our worst enemy just popped up, which is called an ad break. So we're going to have to take a quick break. Hold on to that, though. Hold on to that because, like I said, you're being honest with me. I'm going to be honest with you. So this is the Midnight Ocean Radio Show and podcast. Wow. What an interesting conversation. And I think it's very important that we pull out the negative, right? I think it is. We got to face up to our issues because we can't fix them if we can't identify them. But you're listening to the Midnight Ocean Radio Show and podcast. We'll be back in a few minutes. Hang in there as we have our very special guest,
This
Chris
is the
Gogos.
Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network. Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network.
Andrew. This is the Midnight Ocean Radio Show and podcast. I am your host. Hope everybody took a break there and got your necessary beverage. I got mine. My Timmy Hortons coffee, the best, cheapest coffee you'll ever drink. You're within 500 miles of a Timmy Hortons. We ask. It's well worth the trip. We ask that you go visit them. Make sure you get a nice cup of Joe and a Danish. And while you're there, tell them I said hello. Wow. What a show. I hope you guys are enjoying this. It's, I'm trying to have them dig out some deepest, darkest secrets. But Chris, our very special guest, Chris Gogos, I'm trying. What he told me, pretty benign. No, I think we're right on. We're hitting it right on the head. And those that know me know that Chris is hitting it. This is a home run so far. But a very, very interesting conversation. But before we get back to our very special guest, Chris, I do want to tell you guys, if you are listening to us for the first time, I'm going to say this and say this and say this again, because it is so important, especially with the future growth of what we're doing here. We got to get those subs up on YouTube. So if you have friends, and I don't want to have hat in hand. I don't like doing it. I don't like begging. It's not my nature to beg, but it is important. And let me tell you why it's important. Because we made a commitment when we started to do this show. We have a business plan. We laid out a plan on how we're going to grow the show, where we're going to take the show, what we're going to do. And part of that plan is that we have certain numbers that we have to hit. Just like any other business, you have sales, right? So you are our subs are our sales. That's how we track our progress in this business. And we just, it is so important that we just hit our numbers. That way we know we are on target, because if we're not on target, then we have to readjust. Now, our plan is a 10-year plan. Yeah. So it's not like we're going anywhere, but it would be nice if we can get ahead of the curve a little bit, because things happen just like the economy. Things go up, things go down. And so every one of you that are listening to us on YouTube, if you have subscribed already, and also on Facebook, this goes for you Facebook listeners too. If you would just send out 5 emails or 5 messages, it's not that hard to do. Copy and paste our website and just send it out in your messenger. Facebook will do the rest. And say, hey, look, it got a great show. And if you don't think our show is great, then unsubscribe us anyways, right? And then move on. That's okay too. Let us know either way. We're getting better, but that's the way that you can vote and help us grow the show. Because if 5 of you did that, there's no reason why we're not at 500 subs. If we have 100 right now, 150, and you send out, each one of you send out 5. There's no reason why we can't hit the 500 by the end of the month. Now, our goal for this month is 200, but hey, aim big. Let's aim big. But that's enough of that. You're not going to hear me solicit for money or anything like that. I'm going to solicit for viewers. That's more important to me. The money will come. It's like a great relationship. If you have a great relationship, all those things that come along with that great relationship, they're going to happen regardless. And that's my approach to this. And actually, I think that's kind of what we were going to get to here with Chris Gogos. So Chris, sorry for that. Sorry I had to give you the diatribe there. I feel like not a problem. I feel like a PBS commercial, hey, please donate. But no, we don't ask for money. We need that listenership, because we made a pledge here that we will never charge for our podcast ever in these video feeds. A lot of people that do what we do charge. You have to pay a fee to listen to their shows. We will never do that. And
as long as you have a plan on what you want to do, and you're doing the due diligence to follow it through, and that's really what it's all about, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Has their right to do exactly that. So you're just doing your version of it.
Our version. That's right. We're trying to keep it ad free. I mean, that's the other thing too, is that we are really trying to keep it ad free. And the only way we can do that is by the subscriptions, right? You get more people listening. We don't have to play our ads or anything like that. Now, of course, YouTube and all those guys will. Before we were going on our break, you were.
Yes, I was essentially doing, before I do a forecast, I do a backcast, as I call it, where I was looking, kind of rolling it back a bit, looking in the last little while, timeline-wise, and I wanted to see what your trend lines were kind of showing.
Sleep schedule, all that stuff.
Well, yeah, and if I would have known you, this is what I was saying. If I would have known you a year ago, I would have said, listen, you're not superhuman, and it's good to have all these things on the go, and you get all this energy at night and whatnot, and doing things at all hours, but you have to impose a strict sleep regimen on yourself, purely for health reasons for starters, but for another important reason. And it's got more to do with hardwiring your conscious mind to your subconscious mind. Now, a lot of people don't realize this, and I brought it up even with some close friends of mine. They say silly things to me like, well, I'm an older version of myself, and I don't need as much sleep as I used to when I was younger. And I go, yeah, right, okay, sure. I don't believe that for a minute. And then I go on to remind them that they are human biological units, and whatever wear and tear you put on your body every day, good old-fashioned sleep is going to take care of repairing that wear and tear when you're asleep. So what makes you any different than any other living sentient person or creature? Right? Nothing. You still need your sleep, right? So the reason I'm harping on that is for this reason, because if you make decisions in your waking conscious time when you're tired and burnt out, guess what? You're not going to be making high quality decisions.
Correct.
For anybody. So if I would have known you last year, I would have spoken to you exactly in the way I'm speaking to you now, ahead of time. So if you were thinking about burning the candle at both ends, thinking, yeah, I'm going to do this and do that and get to this right now, and I'll grind it out and I'll drink some more coffee. Again, when I'm not putting down Timmy's or Tim Hortons because I like it myself, but sometimes you have to just get to sleep and have a strict sleep regimen. So having said that, moving forward, just to kind of round out this explanation, because this is a recent trend line from your past. So if you've had issues with maybe burning the candle at both ends, get ready for a subtle transformation or change or an adjustment as you move forward into the last quarter of the year and going into the first quarter of next year. Because here's what the temperament trend lines tell me to tell you as far as what the new adjustment would be. And it is not just a seasonal consideration because of the change of season. It's got more to do with your own internal clock and behavioral trends that are modifying, and they're different for everybody, okay, just to be blunt here. And the one that you're moving into and towards, excuse me, has more to do with you retreating into your highly sharpened, intuitive mind. That is really going to be, in a strange kind of way, the safest bet for you. And let me go on about this, because a lot of people, when I tell them things like this, they say, wait a minute, let me get this straight. You're asking me to prioritize my intuition. And that's exactly what I'm asking you to do. And interestingly and quite ironically at times, you might not have to work as hard to discern what the truth is, as opposed to maybe at other times when you're doing a lot of fact-finding and research, which is important. Don't let me steer you away from that type of due diligence as well, because it's good to get your facts in order with evidence and proof and whatnot, but don't you dare underestimate the power of some random, experience that just comes into your mind and you don't know why it's there. It doesn't mean your mind is being controlled by someone or something. It means that you're tapping into your intuitive sense, and it'll be almost like lightning quick realizations that you might not be able to even explain to anybody. But if you put them to the test, and this is what I want you to do, to prove this forecast for yourself, and you'll feel this more moving forward, you might come into the know of a lot of information that you have no way of really knowing to be true, but it will be true. And that's the inconvenient way that you might arrive at your conclusions about all kinds of things. But you have to go with it. And the reason I'm dwelling on this is I think I mentioned to you in something I emailed you that I almost died from a near-death experience a couple of years ago, and I'm laughing at it now because I had a premonition, okay, that this was going to happen, and I ignored my own premonition. Okay, I lowered my guard when I shouldn't have. And I even remember speaking to a girlfriend of mine that I was dating for some time, whose opinion I really trusted in terms of some very, sensitive symbols and the meanings of them and whatnot. And I remember phoning her up, and I said, I've been getting these pretty strong premonitions about this, that, and the other thing. And her suggestion to me was, well, then don't go anywhere. Literally, don't leave the house for I think she said 7 days or something. And I said, yeah, I think I can do that. I got enough things to keep me busy around the house. And, day 4, I was getting a little bit squirrely. And I said, you know what, I got to go out. And I was invited to the studio, this one studio near where I live. And I lowered my guard and I went. And you know what? That night I did something that didn't feel right. But I did it because it seemed like the right thing to do. I had 2 friends of mine that were drinking, and they thought they were good enough to drive home. And I said, you guys are not in any shape or form to go and drive, period. Right? So I'll drive you. And lo and behold, we hit a freak snow squall, and we get a lot of those up here. But I know how to navigate my way through there. But I won't even get into all the details. But the point is, all of us almost died. We wiped out. It was a minor thing, but it could have been worse. And I ignored my own premonitions. And I'm asking you, the trend that you're moving into, it's all about premonitions and learning to recognize them and to respect them. And that's the trend you're moving into. And I'm not saying you're going to have a near-death experience by any stretch, but I am saying that you're going to have a hyper sense of stuff, and you have to respect it as opposed to completely ignoring it or discounting it, right? And that's really a very exciting place to be moving forward if I was you. And that's what I would be looking forward to if I was you, and to learn to embrace it and work with it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say that. And going back, and those that listen to the show know that obviously I have a day job that I do. Now, I've always worked for myself. I think I've only had a W-2 maybe 4 or 5 times in my life, realistically, but I've been a consultant all my life. So I consult. And, so I do this show, and then to pay the bills, we do consulting. And, the business it tends to slow down. It usually picks up about this time of year, and it is picking up. So I do have some lag, but you talk about sleep. So my schedule, my normal sleep schedule, I apply the Alexander Graham Bell model of sleep, or the Edison model of sleep. I take cat naps. That's how I sleep. So I do this show from 10 o'clock till 2 in the morning. I usually fall asleep about 4 after doing the show because I'm so wound up. So I sleep from 4 until about 10 o'clock. And I've told all my day customers, don't call me before 11. Don't schedule a meeting. Don't do anything before 11. So then I am up from 4. I go 4 to 10. I'm up, get ready. Then from 11 until about 5, I try to spend an hour where I'm in the pool doing some kind of exercise. So it's about 4, I call it a day for my day job. And then I try to spend about an hour in the pool, just exercising. I eat and then I go back to sleep, and then I sleep until about from 5:30, maybe 6 o'clock until 9 o'clock at night. And then I get up and then come into the studio. So that's
Excellent.
my sleep
Well,
schedule.
you know what? Well, as long as you have a strict regiment that you follow, then you're going to be fine, obviously. Yeah. But I just needed to do that backwards look at a glance thing and to see where that trend was taking me.
Now I do want to let you. I mean, one of the things is that like today, that schedule got blown up because a lot of people that are listening tonight, we actually did a show this morning because the gentleman was from Amsterdam. So I had to get up. So that kind of interrupted my beauty sleep. And then on top of that, you have to be keen enough to carry on a show. Sure. So it was one of those things. But, what's really what you're saying is that, I think things are a change for us, because one of the things that I had to do was prioritize. And this is in the last week. I had to prioritize my day job. And so what I did is I cut out all of the customers who occupy my time but don't produce anything. Right. And I just flat out said, look, I can't talk to you. Well,
you know what? This is let me interject, because sure. I'm going to make a valid point to support what you just said and how you can strengthen that as a tactic and strategy moving forward for the balance of this year going into the first quarter of next year. Now I sound like some guy giving some kind of corporate guidance, like to shareholders or something. But think about this seriously. Everything you just said, add another component to it, and it's statistical analysis, okay? Because as you move forward, especially for the next 12 months, one of your best friends is going to be kind of along the lines of what you just said, but now you have to solidify it and make it a little bit more concrete and official, like data points, on a graph, sure. Right? Like at that level. And then go back and analyze everything, because it will be your capacity to do statistical analysis on yourself and anything that you've set forth as intentions to do and whatnot that are going to keep you on the straight and narrow moving forward if you're on or off course. Kind of like what you were saying, the communication to your potential subscribers, et cetera, right? Along those same lines, but now where you have to organize it in a statistical way, so you'll have that fail-safe way to remind yourself of if you're on or off your game plan, right? Yeah. And I can't stress that enough moving forward. Yeah. And also, the reason why I had to restate it a couple of ways like this is because, and I say this respectfully, but I go back to that one deficit or potential character flaw deficit in the fixed fundamentals of your profile that learning to systematize the most boring of details. Because if something's going to trip you up, it'll be some detail. It won't be big picture stuff. It'll be a detail or several. And I want you to be more resilient in that and to really build a strong foundation. I would even say if you can tough it out in the next 11, 12, 13 months, plus minus, that come 2017, in the fall, moving forward, you've got a pretty straight, nice, wonderful trend line that will give you some buoyancy in your value, professionally and personally, right? Seriously, it goes on for like quite a few years, in a good way. I
laugh because, and I will. Like I said, when we did this show. When we started this show up, I said, I'm going to do something I've never done in a business, and that's put a business plan together. And actually, our growth, we're going to, what we call our phase one growth, which is basically develop the skill, develop what we're doing right now, is from the beginning when we started last month all the way up until January 1 of 17. So we've given ourselves in our business model, this is our growth, our growth and development phase. In other words, this is where we're going to we're going to learn about, Jeff's going to learn how to speak better. Jeff's going to learn how to do voice and diction. We're going to grow our audience. We're going to grow our network of people, our sphere of influence, as they would say. That is all the way to 2017. And then we said in the business plan that after a year and a couple months in 2017, at that point, we think that we have the art of broadcasting down. In other words, we have our equipment worked out. We have the video worked out. We have the studio worked out. We have, like I said, myself, because there's a lot of learning in this industry that I still have to do from a voice and diction standpoint and stuff. But it's funny that you're saying that, because that is right in line with our business model that we're for the show.
You see, you just validated one other important thing here, and that has to deal with when an individual or a group of individuals are building a business enterprise.
Yeah.
They bring their personalities to the office, okay? And I can't tell you how many times I've been in situations where I've had a team leader or a sales manager hire me, and they've got some issues with a team. Mm-hmm. And, I go in not so much to do a pep rally, but I want to find out the team members. I want to know their personalities. And with their permission, of course, I sit here and I, do these profiles, and I get to do like a little round table where we sit around, and with everybody's permission, I speak freely in front of everybody. And usually, sometimes I feel like a comedian because they're all like cracking up laughing, but it's nervous laughter, mm-hmm. right? Because I'm hitting certain points that
Sure.
are relevant. But time and time again, what I've seen is, for the experienced managers, what they do is they actually embrace and integrate the people's personalities and tendencies into the business plan. It only stands to reason, right? So I think unconsciously you've been doing that for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's like completely normal and natural, and actually more effective than trying to force yourself to do something unnatural mm-hmm. before it's time.
Yeah.
Right. So, just grunt it out in the short term. Seriously, just do what you got to do to shake out all the stuff that doesn't work. And that old saying of, if it's broke, then fix it. But if it ain't broke, just leave it alone. That's relevant. It really is right now.
Well, you're absolutely, you're absolutely like this phase here. This was our audio. I knew that, granted you can get on the internet and do podcasts and stuff. This phase that we just completed is I built all of you're a sound guy, so I built all of the audio processing for the show.
Awesome. Yeah,
I'm a software guy. That's what I do. That's my day job, is I write software and telecommunications with Kodak, voice, all that stuff. So I wrote a lot of our processing. I actually, instead of going out and spending $10,000 on a processor, I said, well, I'll just write it myself. So that's exactly what I did. And that's why, to get our normalization, all that, you're a sound guy, so you know where I'm going with that. So that was phase one. Now we're interjecting a new piece, which is we're actually increasing our video capacity, in the sense that we're going to be feeding out not just to YouTube, but Facebook, Vimeo, Gaia, all of the different video feeds. So that's phase two, and that's going to take us through the rest of this year. Phase three is actually a new studio. And that's going to take us all the way to summer because we're going to build an actual dedicated studio so we can have guests come in and everything like that. And then, of course, part of that studio is get more radio equipment in here. There's certain things that we have to have that our syndicator said, look, you have to have this. You can't use a sound mixer board. You have to have an audio board. You have to have a delay. There's things that you just got to fundamentally have.
Well, especially when you're running an actual broadcast facility, because that's really what it is, right?
Yeah, exactly. We're a radio station just without an antenna. Because we feed out, we're going to be syndicated. Then we're done with that in the summer. At that point, we start our syndication process. And it was funny because I already have syndicators that are coming to me that say, look, we want to syndicate you now. And I'm like, no, we're not. It's not in our plan. Our plan is now next year, we'll be ready for syndication, but not right now.
I would say definitely next year you'll be ready for all kinds of new and exciting things.
Yeah.
I would also add too let me get this calculation.
Chris, hold on to that because you hear the music. It's amazing when you have a conversation and instead of an interview, how time flies and everything. But now I do want to, let's wrap, when we come back from the break, let's wrap me up. But I have some questions for you. And I want to get into, how, why, when, where. I know that you talked about your ND, your near-death experience, but we'll trust me, it's not all going to be about me tonight. We're gonna turn the camera over to you a little bit and ask you some questions. But you're listening to the Midnight Ocean Radio Show podcast. Join us every weeknight from 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
This is the Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network.
time creep up on you. I love this song. Ed Roman is going to be in the studio, actually going to be on the air with us next week. He is a fellow Canadian. He's Indie Artist of the Year 2015. Hopefully he'll be 2016 as well. He's going to be down in my hometown, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Hopefully we'll get over there and see him, go visit the family, but also support our good friend Ed Roman as he is hopefully going to win the 2016 Indie Artist of the Year. Like I said, he's nominated again, but Ed's a great guy, and he'll be on the show on the 30th, and he is a fellow Canadian, Chris. I want to let you know. It's great things come out of Canada, besides Tim Hortons and hockey.
Well, there's a lot of us. And, it's funny. I was saying this to someone the other day when they were talking about the differences between Canadians and Americans.
You guys are so nice. I can already tell you the answer to that. Canadians are so freaking nice. And I know you guys say, no, you're not. But
well, we are, and we can be a little bit ornery at times as well. But that's when, you know what? Anybody can be that way, good and bad, light and dark, the polarity thing. But I just think we've been neighbors for so long that sometimes we look at things that are going on down there and we kind of, it's like, it's the way we talk to neighbors sometimes, like we think, geez, it's just the dialogue. The dialogue should just always be allowed to take place no matter what's going on. And then I think everything's always going to be fine.
Canada should be like, man, will you clean up your yard, cut your grass, stop throwing your trash over the fence? And so
and you know what? We could have, like a lot of times I think when the countries have discussions, like I don't like to talk about politics and stuff, as I think I told you, but to have private discussions about serious things, I think is more the low-key approach. You know what I mean? No cameras, no big deal. Just, have a barbecue or something. Let's just have like a discussion about something and for an afternoon and then call it a day, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Here's my great Canadian people are awesome story. I spend a lot of time. One of my bigger customers is actually there in Toronto. So I do spend a lot of time in Toronto, or I did last year. This year it kind of slowed down. So I'm going to Tim Hortons. Imagine that. I'm going to Tim Hortons, and the way that this is in Mississauga, right? So the way that this Tim Hortons is that you got to kind of cross over. It's a weird how they got it because I guess they were limited on space, but how they made their drive-through. So you got to kind of drive through the part. It's just bizarre. It's the strangest thing. And so a guy cuts me off, and I pull on an American move. An a-hole American move. I hit the horn, right? So this guy pulls in front of me. He cuts me off because I was waiting to get in line, but I didn't want to block traffic coming into there because it's weird. So I do a typical American move. I hit my horn. So this guy rolls down his window, and I'm like, here we go. Hockey, here we go. We're going to go.
Here we go.
Here in Canada, here we go. And he looks back and he looks at me and he goes, did I cut in front of you? And I was like, yeah, and here I am. I'm being the a-hole. I'm just being honest. I was being the a-hole. And he goes, I am horribly sorry. He said, hold on. He backs up, and because of the way that they have the curb, they keep you in the line. He drives his car over the curb, risking damage to his car. And he's got a friend in there. His buddy's in their car with him. And so his buddy gets out, and his buddy's like directing him. And, he removed himself from the line, drove over the curb so he can get out of my way. And I'm sitting there going, I feel like a complete, and Sandy's with me. And I'm like, I'm a complete a-hole. I use some other words for myself. I at the end of the day, I was like, holy smokes. Cause this guy risked tearing his car up, going over the curb to get out of the line so that he can circle around behind me. So then he circles back around behind me and gets it. And he's like, are you, and I was like, yeah, okay. So now I feel bad. I feel horrible. I feel horrible about this. And then the whole time that this goes on, I didn't see his buddy because his buddy got out of the car to kind of direct him. So his buddy goes into Tim Hortons. And so we go around, I make my order, get my coffee and get my Danish and everything. And Sandy gets her oatmeal. She loves the oatmeal. So she gets the oatmeal, and I tell the guy, the cashier, I said, look, I'm going to buy this guy. I felt so bad. I'm like, whatever it is, what did he order? I'm going to buy his thing. And the cashier goes, well, sir, you can't do that. And I'm like, what do you mean I can't do that? Yeah, it's some stupid rule. And she goes, no, you don't understand. His friend came in here and they just bought yours.
Isn't that something?
And I was like, are you kidding me? This is great. And it's just, guys, I'm going to tell you, in America, if you ever want to go, I love Toronto. And if you ever want to just get away, you got to go up to Toronto and just hang out for the weekend. It is such a great, we hang out in Mississauga, that area. But I tell people, Canada, you will see a whole different life. And by the way, while you're up there, talk to them about their health care. Ask them.
Oh, geez, that's another discussion.
But see,
that's another discussion.
But I know we don't talk about politics, but I was one of these guys. Canada's healthcare, and everybody I talk to up there says, look, for the emergency stuff, you can get in and see a doctor, which is the way it should be. For the emergency stuff, for the serious stuff, you can get in and go to the hospital and you see a doctor. But yeah, you're going to wait to see the doc. But you do that here in the States anyway, so it's no different. And at least you don't have you're not paying $1,200 a month for healthcare.
This is it, right? But the tax thing is the offset, right? So, but no, I mean you're definitely taken care of and you're looked after if you go into emergency for sure.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good things, about all these systems, but I think there has to be some balance, and people have to really understand what the give and take is, the pluses and the minuses. And again, that's another conversation.
Yeah, it's all I'm just saying, I love Canada, except for the cold. I can't handle the cold anymore. When I lived in Chicago, I had to move because I just couldn't handle the cold anymore. And
well, it's so funny you say that, because out at the one studio up here, we have. Well, it's a really nice studio. It's in the middle of a forest. And the beauty about it is that, we have electricity going to it, but there's no heat. So if you want heat, we have a, wood-burning fireplace. So you want heat, you got to keep that oven going, right?
Yeah.
So the beautiful thing is, in the wintertime, I always look forward to just going there, and it's just such a beautiful environment because you can go and make music, and there's, we got all the amenities there, but the heat thing is like old school where you got to be shoveling wood into the fireplace. But I'll tell you, it keeps you humble. And if you need to eat, well, guess what? You're cooking while the fire is on.
That's funny.
Right. So it's a different way to exist in the wintertime, but it gets cold.
Yeah, you got $100,000 mixing board and a couple of $100,000 worth of audio processing, and you have a wood burning stove. And you have a wood burning stove right in the studio. I'm telling you, that's awesome. I'll send you a picture. That is awesome. That it's funny because like I said, Ed Roman is a good friend of the show, and he's on here now. I know he's got his own studio as well, and we hear stories. He tells me stories about him and his buddies going in there and cutting albums, and I think it's the same way. It's like it's all music and stuff, but heat is secondary. Just wear more clothes. Heat is secondary. Just wear more clothes. And back to the food and the coffee. It's always important to keep that going. Yeah, the old Timmy Hortons. Timmy Hortons, yeah, exactly. But listen, I was gonna before I forget, because I really want to taper off that one thing about going into the next 4 or 5 years, and then I won't talk about the forecast part anymore. But I need to do the due diligence to finish that off. Sure. The one major trend line that I'm going to wrap up with here is the behavioral temperament. And again, this is specifically to do with you. People can pull a salient point out of what I'm about to say and apply it in their own lives, but there's a customized, personalized trend line for you specifically. And it has to do with the idea of learning to update and integrate new things that you've discovered to be true. A lot of times we discover something to be true,
that we didn't know was true before, or we learned some new facts that we didn't know existed before. But a lot of times we don't know how to sort or organize that stuff. Well, in your case, not only do you have to sort and organize, but you also have to integrate it and update your memory banks. I'm talking like, short-term and long-term, because as you move forward for a 4 or 5 year, even 6 year period, it's imperative for you to do this, because there's a 90% probability your success will not only depend on it, but the situations will demand it, right? And I can't say it any other way than the way I just said it. So if you can find that strategy and implement it, things will work out 90%.
And I need to send you, I won't even send you an NDA, but I need to send you our business plan, because for this show here, one of the things that I did is every 3 months I have a reevaluation period, a go, no go situation. Now, obviously, the go, no go is we're going. It's not that we're going to can the project or the thing if we don't hit our marks. What we're going to do is we're going to reevaluate, and we actually had one of those periods just the other day, and that's where what we do is we look at our format. And we changed, and because this is the growth period for this is I want to say the understanding, gather all the data points. And one of the things that we realized when we were looking at our models was that our listenership, people would come onto the show and listen, except our guys that are loyal. They would come onto the show, listen within the first 20 minutes, leave, and then never come back. And what we found out is in our data model and our reevaluation, we found out that what's going on is that they're expecting a guest. So what did we do? We moved the guest up to the first slot, because people want to hear the guest. They don't want to hear me talking all day long. So they want to hear. So that was our reevaluate. And so every 3 months in our business model, in our business plan, we have what we call a reevaluation, go, no go. And that's where we can reboot. That's where we say we're going to reboot an aspect of our show. That's when we're maybe add an hour or maybe take an hour away, but we're going to wait for 3 months.
No, good. So you're doing that editing, reevaluating, and pulling out the best of version of what you've discovered and integrating that new component. It's like being an editor, always finding the best scenes or the way you're going to cut a picture or whatever. Sure. It's along we always want to do the best job we possibly can, no matter what we do for a living, regardless of what our personality is. And I think having a tactic or a strategy, like a working one that you can do in real time, is something that all of us ought to adapt. But in your case, you actually have that as a quite a long trend line moving forward, and it's like it's a very fortunate one, but it would be a shame to not live up to the expectations of that behavior and miss getting the positive returns on it. So that's cool. Okay, so I'm done with your chart then. I'm going to put it in a special folder here. I'm going to say, okay, I've done the little thing for Jeff. And what's funny is I didn't know your full name or your birth date beforehand. This was all live, random, right from the beginning. Yep. I did my calculations on the fly. Sure.
You hit every one of them. You did. I honestly, I think you actually hit people that know me, that listen to the show and stuff. They know that you hit pretty much every one of them.
There's more that I could have said, but I didn't want to go too deep. But no, this was cool. I really enjoyed it.
Enough about me. Enough about me. Let's talk about you for a while and stuff. So you do. Obviously, you alluded that you do sound engineering. Seriously, how do you? Did you have an epiphany? Did you wake up? Was this a skill that you had? Was there a manual you read? Did it all come about from your near-death experience? I mean, you moved. I mean, you have a skill that I don't think this is a skill that you can go to school for. This is not a skill that you can read on the internet or watch a few YouTube videos. I think this is a personal. I think there's an empathic intuitive kind of ability that you already had. So when did you, have you always had that? Or did you develop it?
You know what? It's a little bit of both. And I've never had anybody ask it quite the way you just asked it. But then again, I didn't reveal too much about myself, about, the sound, the music stuff. But when I was a teenager, I would always hear these musical compositions in my head. And I didn't know really if they were mine or somebody else's or something I heard on the radio that afternoon or last week or whatever. And it wasn't until one of my cousins essentially came into my life, and he gave me this guitar, and he wanted to teach me how to play with my fingers, not with a guitar pick. And I remember him being really firm with me, saying, "Listen, if you want to learn how to play the guitar, you got to hear the notes in your head, and you have to be able to express them with each of your fingers, and your thumb is like, the bass note." And I always remembered him saying this over and over and over again to me, and I thought, wow, like he's pretty hardcore. Like I want to learn to play, rock and roll, like from Led Zeppelin or something, and, just bang off those like hardcore rock and roll riffs, right? And it was around that time that I was also studying a bunch of esoteric things. And a funny thing happened to me. There was one weekend, I remember, it was like the whole world opened up to me when I learned major and minor scales. Now, did you ever have this experience, if you've ever learned about music, or no?
Well, I learned about music, but I tried the guitar thing, and I sucked at it. And I was like you, though. Okay. I wanted to play Stevie Vai, and I wanted to be the rock and roll.
You wanted to get to that sound that you were hearing, and you wanted to, exactly.
But, but for me, though, it was working in the studio. One of the things is that's where, I went down kind of not professionally. Well, it's weird that I'm in the radio, but I like good music. Good eclectic indie music. And I always said I play a mean radio. I'm very good at the radio.
Interesting. No, the reason I asked you about your opinion on the major and minor scales, because for me, the impact that it had on me was very profound, because I started to realize that I was already hearing major and minor scales in my head without even knowing what they were, like technically. Yeah. Right? And even to this day, I think I have kind of like a photographic memory, because a lot of times when I'm just improvising with my friends, we'll just come up with stuff off the cuff. Mm-hmm. And they're always amazed at how myself and one of my other friends, we can just pick up on the groove like right away. And for us, it's like, what, can't you guys hear that as well? And they can't. They have to really drill down technically to try to understand, what is that? Is that like a this or to that? And I don't have to do that now. It does one of my other colleague friends. So what I discovered when I was a teenager is I could do this. Now, when I started my esoteric studies at the same time, I started realizing that when I looked at a name, the same thing happened to me. I'd look at it and I'd go, oh, wow, isn't that interesting? This person's got, this kind of optimism at the front end of their personality, the way they express themselves, but then they turn into this real serious person in their willpower and the way they are motivated, and they can get and so this 360 multi-layered, very rich composition of sorts would emerge like almost instantaneously when I'd look at a name. And I thought, well, this is kind of strange. There's got to be some kind of logic to this. And I remember when I was in school, I'd hang out with some pretty interesting people, different types, people that were into the sciences and stuff. And I always remember this one friend of mine who'd always say to me, look, you got to break it down rationally and logically. And he was very hardcore about it, and he kind of took away all the mystery of it, right? Mm-hmm. So when I was a teenager, I discovered that I had to try to validate or prove this to myself. And that's when I stumbled literally onto, I guess, the occult dimension, or the hidden information part of history. And then I got completely attracted to, I guess, the hidden ancient history of humanity. And that's when I discovered things like Pythagoras and the Pythagorean theorem. And I just kept going from there and realizing that there is an esoteric or hidden dimension to everything we've ever been taught that you may or may not ever be able to get a degree in, let alone get a job in moving forward. So then it became all self-taught, self-acquired knowledge through trial and error. But it wasn't until I started doing charts for other people that I really got hooked in a good way, because I realized that there was some positive feedback that was coming back to me from people who were asking me to do these charts for them. And I was never charging for them. I was always doing them for free. And this continued for quite a long time, because I too had a regular job working in the studio. But it was also very important for me to get it right and to be accurate. And that's when I developed my my own policies with regards to not wanting to know anything about someone on the front end. I just wanted to know their name and their birth date, and to let me talk, give me permission, and then you decide if I'm on or not. And that's really where I started to really enjoy the work even more.
Sure.
Really, that's how I got into it way back when I was a teenager in my early 20s.
Now, obviously, like you were reading, it's almost like you're reading like a medical chart when you were going over my reading.
Well, it's like that, but it's not a medical chart. It's like a schematic of a bunch of patterns. Right.
So what is this? Without giving. I mean, so what? So basically, the process is you write down my name, you have my date. What does this chart look like? I mean, what is? Can you share that with us, or is it more of a mental mind map that you do? Because when you were reading this, it's almost like it was, like I said, you would put it in a computer or whatever, name, date, or what, and it was like a boom. I'm not saying you're doing that. But the way that you read it, I got the impression that there was, I guess my question is, how can you have that much detail that quickly? Because we never talked before this. I mean, we talked this morning, to make sure that we're still doing a show this evening. But other than that, I was like, how in the heck did you have all this information this quickly?
Well, because, again, it goes back to the letters and the numbers, right? Oh. My issue is if the numbers and the letters accurately match what you're given as a name and the current common name, which in reality are the only identifiers that we have, right, is the given name our parents gave us, right, plus the regular name that, that we're known by. In many cases, it is the middle name that's dropped, or we have a short form of the first name, which is in your case, right, Jeffrey, Jeff, right?
Jeff, yep.
So, right, and believe me, all these little nuances and changes make all the difference in the world.
Sure.
But because I've been doing this for so long, it's almost like to memory. It's like if somebody said to me, play this riff, C minor, G major. Okay. It played them 1,000 times, right? Or 1,000,000 times. So to me, when I look at certain placements of letters and numbers in a certain way, I'm not saying they always mean the same thing to me, because there's, believe me, always new patterns that emerge. And that's one of the things that keeps me going. Because if I ever get bored doing this, I'm going to move into like tree farming or something, like something just totally different. Because I think that's what I'm waiting for, is that day when I'm just going to get so bored and I'm going to say, okay, you know what? I've explored this as much as possible, but no, lo and behold, I'm always seeing these new patterns. Wow. And that's what keeps me going. So to me, it's more of a hardwired thing, but the numbers and the letters are the giveaways for me. Like as soon as I see the first couple of patterns, I get hooked. Like, okay, I got to really, take it to the nth degree and really go and explore the whole thing. And that's really what it is. It's a numbers-based science more than anything else.
Yep. And talk about numbers. I'm listening to the board.
There we go.
The volume's going back up. It's hard to believe that there is actually like a 25-minute gap where we actually get to talk on a normal show, because everything is flying so flat, so fast, so quickly. Our conversation here, as we are talking with our very special guest, Chris Gogos, joining us from the great country up north of Canada. And we are talking, instead of talking about me, we're going to be talking about Chris for the next segment. And because this is intriguing, I hope you're enjoying the show as much as I am. We'll be back in a few.
Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network. Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network.
That is right, Andrew. This is the Midnight Ocean Radio show and podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Norton. You can join us live every weeknight from 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or on the web at www.themidnightocean.com as we roll into the night with our very special guest, Chris Gogos. Wow, what a show. I hope you guys are enjoying this. And like I said,
Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network.
That is bizarre. That is really, really bizarre. As I was so rudely interrupted by that. Completely lost my train of thought. Well, when in doubt, go to the guest, right? I hear the production in my head going, guest. Go to the guest. Cut to the guest. Oh, Lord. Chris, it is early in the morning, my friend.
Yes.
And everything. So, like I said, I'm fascinated how you see this. So you actually see these in these patterns in your head. And then, of course, you have, I guess you probably put together some kind of notation in order to get them written down.
There you go. That you know what? That's an excellent way to describe it. It's almost like a score that I'm trying to interpret.
Gotcha.
Right? And there is a notational component to it, absolutely. But because I'm so hardwired to it, it's kind of like automatic.
Yeah.
It literally is automatic. And that's why I'm a stickler for getting the accurate data on the front end and to take a minute just to, write it down, look at it, and do, some minor calculations. But once the schematic is kind of there, I can check it frontwards, backwards, up, down, in and out. And you know what? It's like an equation at that point. And then I can talk about it. It's like fully knowing what a score is, and you're confident that, this is the intro, the verse, the chorus. It goes back to that same kind of thing. It's a very, very, it's a rendering. That was the word I was looking for.
Sure.
It's a one-off rendering that I do. And when I look at that, I know exactly what I need to talk about in whatever space of time I have to convey some info to the person.
Yeah.
And usually for a custom document, sometimes in the older days, I'd write it like in a text form. But now I feel more comfortable just recording it digitally and locking it down as an MP3 and securely sending it to the client wherever they may be.
Cool.
And in that way, they can deal with it at their convenience to listen to it and transcribe it and stuff like that.
Cool. Yeah, it's kind of like how I write software. I mean, when a customer comes to me and says, I want XYZ, I know all the components that go in to make XYZ. It's very important that they tell me clearly what XYZ is. And in your case, it's the name, it's the proper name, and then the go by name, and then the data. Yep. Makes sense.
Yeah. And then away I go.
Off to the races.
You asked me one question about how I kind of morphed or migrated, from the audio, the music into. Now, I did speak to you of my younger years, right?
Yep.
But now there was one, and I'm going to get to the near-death experience, but I don't want to dwell on it too much more than what I mentioned about, me ignoring my own forecast, which is ironic and kind of humorous. But there was something that happened in 1988, and I'm dating myself, but I don't mind because it was very dramatic, and it had to do with something that was happening to me and I guess the world at large. I was sensing something strange occurring, and I didn't know what it was. And what I discovered in retrospect, what it was there was a changeover going from one way of being to something else. And I discovered that it was what most people call the harmonic convergence. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that? Okay. I didn't even know what the harmonic convergence was until years later. But it happened around that time. And I just started sensing that there was something else I had to do with my life. And that's when I really started to get more deeper into the study of esoteric teachings. And what was very bizarre around that time was people were coming out of the woodwork calling me, strangers that I didn't even know, asking me to do a reading for them. And I'd say to them, like, how did you get my number? For starters, right? And they'd say, so-and-so gave it to me, and I never gave them permission to hand out my number.
Yeah.
But these people were calling me in droves, and it was mothers, fathers, like prominent people in the community, right? And they just wanted me to do readings. And I thought, well, what the hell is a reading? I don't do readings. I do reports, that's what I was starting to call them at the time.
Yeah.
So I was pulled into the local community doing readings. And I never thought I'd ever be categorizing myself as a reader, but that's how everybody started seeing me as. And it was such a strange feeling because I was pretty much a very private person. I'd keep to myself, and I would never meddle in other people's business, let alone telling them things that they ought to be doing or anything like that. But I found that people were giving me permission to do just that. So anyway, this went on for quite a few years while I was holding down my regular job, and then something very peculiar happened. This call came through from a producer for, I think it was the CBC at the time. And I was saying, yes, can I help you? I remember, I thought it was like some client that was calling me about some music or sound effects thing, and it wasn't. It was something on the personal side. And she said, oh, I got your name and number from so-and-so, and I hear that you have this, knowledge about numerology and some other things pertaining to Pythagorean mathematics. And I said, yeah, okay, so how can I help you? Did you want a reading? That's what I thought. And she says, no, we want you to do a little segment with us on the subject. And I said, oh. I said, okay, I think I can do that. And I got all excited, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I did that, and then it went on from there where I'd start to do more interviews, radio interviews, just on the telephone, kind of like this.
Yeah.
But then it just went and it took a life of its own after that. And that's when I started realizing there was a big attraction for people wanting to get readings done on themselves. And from listening to the feedback from people, what I discovered is not only was this technique accurate, but it was helping people, but people through their feedback were also helping me understand what it is that I was not only doing, but how to make it better. And that was one of the motivators that kept me going, as I told you, I think, before the break. Because it was kept interesting for me, and because I was learning more with every literal new reading, and as time passed, I started to perfect the analysis technique and refine it. But what I did not count on was how many people were trying to get a hold of me, and then I started to feel bad that I couldn't get back to them in real time. And I met a capacity issue head on, and I thought, wait a minute, I can't continue doing this because I'm going to let down a whole bunch of people. And what I did is I unilaterally stopped doing radio interviews because I just couldn't meet the demand. Mind you, I was doing a lot of the stuff for free, but I loved the idea of helping people and making a difference in their understanding about themselves and their personalities, and how I could help people take a weakness and transform it into something positive. And that was really the thing that kept me now moving forward into a sabbatical. It was a self-imposed sabbatical. And I stayed there for quite a few years, servicing the existing clients that I did have and perfecting this analysis technique that I was so gung-ho about. But then, as I think I mentioned to you in some information I sent you, that prolonged open-ended sabbatical ended the day that I had my near-death experience with the car accident. And the epiphany that I had then was, okay, I got it. I understood what was happening. That if I didn't find a way to get out of my sabbatical and to reintegrate myself and to reconnect with like people again, that maybe my time on the planet was over. And this is the way I rationalized it to myself. So from that point moving forward, I started to kind of crystallize a focus. And I took the best of what I thought I've gleaned or come to know up to this point in time, and I rolled it up into the idea of alchemy. Now, alchemy is an old word. It's not new. But I thought it was the perfect model, the perfect symbol to represent a person's journey in life as they're discovering themselves, who they are, what they're here to do, and maybe even why. If you're lucky, you'll find out why, but don't count on it. Because I think that's one of the hidden dimensions to our experience, is we're not supposed to know everything. We can keep searching, we can keep looking for things, but we may not ever know the why behind it, and that's okay. But the work that we ultimately are going to be called upon to doing is kind of like a big process. And it's during this process that we're all involved in separately, but together when we interact with others. This is really the path that we progress on. And even if we fail, we're still on a path. And the big takeaway for all this, since the near-death experience, is I came away with this overriding consensus that life is going to continuously push back and challenge us no matter what we're doing. And it's in that testing that the true metal of our character will be tested. Always. It will never stop until we drop dead. However, that is going to befall us. And it's in this process that our authentic behaviors will reveal themselves to us.
Sure.
And to the world. And it happens to everybody. Ready or not, it's going to happen. And I'm now on this personal journey to share what I found with people. And it was so bizarre that it had to take a near-death experience for this to happen. And the seconds leading up to the wipeout in the car accident were actually the most, ironically, the most comical. If I could, have a camera in the car and you could see, I'm driving two friends of mine home that are impaired. Now, I was not drinking. I don't drink, or very rarely, 3 times a year.
Yeah.
And I was driving in a snow squall. The snow was going sideways. The visibility is non-existent. And I got two guys in the car freaking out while I'm like the calm one, like a captain flying some kind of an airplane, during some kind of a storm. That's what it felt like. And I'm just saying to them, listen, can you guys just shut up and let me focus on the road? And I knew where I was going, and I saw these lights in the distance of this one factory on the corner, and I could just see, and it was a rural road. There were no lights other than the ones in the distance, right? So I navigated in pure blindness with the utmost confidence. And I knew we were going to get to where we were going to go completely unscathed. But it was only in the last second before we wiped out that all the pandemonium and the confusion with my passengers came into being. And it was the weirdest feeling, but I knew that we were going to be fine and survive. And it wasn't until I saw the panic or felt the panic of the passengers that I knew I was the one that had to keep it together, or we were going to die for sure, right? And the big takeaway was that, when they say your life flashes before your eyes when you're going to die, that did happen. For a split second, it actually happened. And my response to that vision was, no, I'm not going to die this way. And then it was just over in a second or two. But it was the aftermath, after that I was able to, I believe, really perfect. And it might sound strange the way I'm saying this to you, but my ability to do certain kinds of calculations in my mind have improved. And I'm not saying it was the accident or the near-death experience. I just think what happened is I now value life more than anything else. And every second, every minute that ticks moving forward of linear time, I value it now more than I ever did before, because I know how precious life is and how quick anybody's life can be extinguished when they're not paying attention.
Yeah. Well, I think what it is you apply the filter. And so, I mean, that talent was probably always there to begin with, but as you go through, and I think that's part of the aging process, as you get smart, you know, there's more filters. We'll put it in a sound room kind of analogy here, but it's like we're applying filters to our life, and we're filtering out all the junk, all the noise, all the background noise.
Exactly. Better. Yeah, that's very well said. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And I believe since that time, and that's been a couple of years now, about 3 years, I now believe with every fiber of my being that the crossroads that humanity is finding themselves in right now in real time as we speak, it is a crossroads, and there's a ending of a long-term trend line that's been in play, and there's a new one that's about to begin. And a part of me fears extinction of the human race in its extreme sense, and another part of me is completely optimistic and seeing things in a very positive light. And it's like the difference between you're near a black hole. You know, if we were out in outer space in a spaceship and we see a black hole and we're getting pulled into it, there's one of two things we can do. We can try to burn all our energy and go warp 9 in the other direction and hope that we can break free of this, you know, gravitational well we're being sucked into. Or we could say, wait a minute here. Okay, we've come to this point in our reality where we could take a chance and do warp 9 and get away, but we could destroy ourselves in the process.
Yeah.
Or we could just turn around and go warp 9 right into the black hole.
All in. Yeah.
All in, right? But I'm not going to stay in the middle anymore, right? Well, I think in a lot of people's hearts and minds, they might be feeling kind of the same way.
Sure.
But when it comes to one's behaviors and their own personalities, the ones that they were born with, the ones that are almost like genetically encoded in you, the best default is to just learn to be yourself, for starters, and to not be something that you're not, because you will fail. And the universe will push back and remind you of that. Mm-hmm. It's only when I found, and I've had the benefit of people actually sharing with me a lot of their, I guess, more private dimensions of their life after I've done a profile for them, and I'm always amazed at the synchronicity component, the harmony component, and the dissonance component as well. Because let's face it, when things don't go according to plan and things don't work out the way we want, we don't feel good. We feel out of sorts. We feel that, you know, we're getting a bad lot in life. We're being dealt a crappy hand, you know, like all kinds of ways to describe it. And now I'm a real believer in the old saying of know yourself. You've heard of that saying, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Know yourself.
Know yourself, yep.
Was in the last couple of years. I mean, I've read this when I was like a teenager. All the philosophers would say this. I mean, Pythagoras would say it, and all the people that he influenced, all those other philosophers, they all say that. And there's a lot of people that say it today. And regardless of where that saying came from, it is completely and utterly true as a goal in one's life to know yourself. It could mean so many things on so many levels. It could mean, well, if you don't know something, then go know it yourself. Like, go figure it out yourself. Because there's no substitute for direct revelation. There really isn't. You can go and learn something from the best and most brilliant minds on the planet, and we do that. That's how we teach each other stuff. And I get that, and that's cool, and it's valid. But there's no substitute for direct revelation. There really isn't. and never was. I mean, we could have the greatest teachers and the prophets, and I don't want to get into religion, but there's a lot of wonderful messages that the greatest prophets have given to everybody. But really, if you don't get something, then you don't get it until you're ready to get it.
Yeah.
And this is the beauty about alchemy as a modeling environment, is that when a person is ready, they will understand something, and not 1 second before it. And that's why, with even the way I'm doing what I do now, I'm not saying I withhold information from people, but I'm very aware that, for example, if someone is very thin-skinned and they can't take personal criticism, okay, and I'm not saying you're one of them, because you are not. You are on the other side. You're actually a lot tougher than you probably give yourself credit for, because I did speak to you about your character assets regarding being emotionally more perceptive than, say, others, and you have an innate sense of justice and fairness, right? So that shows an elevated understanding of the emotional realm. But if somebody was at the other extreme, where they're thin-skinned and they can't take personal criticism, I can still respect the soul of that human being, but I will put the information in a certain context that'll help them get it. Do you understand?
Yep.
And then by the understanding part, they can then take and incorporate.
And I love talking.
Sorry.
And that's all right. And make a point of making the information usable, in terms of making it work in their favor and not against them. Because a lot of people that are thin-skinned, for example, will do and say things that compromise their most important relationships in life. And why would you want someone to just be in your life to humor you and to tell you stuff that you just want to hear and know, right? I'm aware of that fine balance now, whereas before I wasn't. Because for me, it's all about getting information out to people that is not humoring them, but it's matching their personality traits. And this is one of the most biggest takeaways, whether it's a personal friend, a client, or I'm talking to a perfect stranger in a work environment where I'm doing profiles for random people that I don't know. And I'm trying to create team chemistry, natural team chemistry without the egos. Believe me, it's no easy feat, but if you understand the personality of the individuals on the team, it becomes easier. And my bottom line is to create people, to develop people's personalities where they can invest or express their assets and their equity in their character traits more than their liabilities or their shortcomings. If you got shortcomings, and we all do, work on them on your own time at home. Don't bring them to the team. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like, don't bring them to the office.
Yeah.
You know, so the more work you do on the front end where you can get to know yourself, that's really the big takeaway that I learned and I had to remind myself for the last couple of years. Linear time is of the essence, and the more people I can help to get to that point in understanding, then I feel like I'm doing my job and living out my life purpose.
Wow.
So that's really a nutshell of where I'm coming from now.
I mean, it clicks. It definitely clicks. I mean, it's cool. I mean, it's interesting to hear the evolution, right? And how it was there, and then how you evolved to actually, because I think everybody has that ability. I mean, we talk about human language, and only 10% of what the words that we speak make up communication. The rest of it is our emotions, our being in the same thing, in the same room together, and the body language and stuff. And it's so, I guess it's so hard to be able to project, true communication with people unless you have, there's got to be like those filters. You got to be able to remove all the junk, I spoke with my voice coach today, and she was saying, you got to have the ability, which makes a great broadcaster, is you got to be able to filter out all of the unnecessary words, all of the unnecessary actions, and still convey your message. And you got to do that without them ever seeing you. Now we have the video. So there is some talent there, and it's neat to see or to hear how you evolved and how your life experience helped you remove those filters or add those filters and remove all that noise from your life so you can have clarity. Because I can tell you, when you were doing the reading, one of the things I picked up was the clarity. It was crystal clear. It wasn't, I don't know if you noticed this with yourself, but, well, let's hold on to that. Let's take a break, and when we come back, I'm going to expand on that thought a little bit. So we're listening to our good friend, our good guest, Chris Gogos.
This is the Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network.
And when we get back, I'm going to make an observation. That's right. I'm going to turn the table a little bit here and make an observation. I might be right. I might be wrong. Who knows? I'm not the expert. I'm just a radio host. Join us here on the web at www.themidnightocean.com or live every weeknight from 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. We'll be back in a few with our very special guest, Chris Gogos. about you guys, but when I hear that song, I think about the old 1970 TV shows, the old sitcoms. Mork from Ork. Remember Mork from Ork? The great shows, Happy Days. When America TV was actually entertaining. Remember those days? Take you back a little bit. But I don't want to take you back too far into the past because we need to deal with the present. And presently we have, oh, by the way, Becky, yes, it would be awesome if Tim Hortons sponsored the show. It would be incredible. Now I know I hit big league. I know I hit the big league when Tim Hortons sponsors this show. They just send me a bag of coffee every week. That's all it takes. Doesn't take a whole lot to please me. I don't even need the money. I don't need the cash. I just need the coffee. As much as we sponsor Tim Hortons, I should say. We support them. But no, the good old days. But let's get back. Let's get grounded. Let's not diverge too much. So, with our guest, Chris, so, right before we were so rudely interrupted by the break and everything, it was funny because I did a radio show this morning and with another guest from the Netherlands, and he was like, "You Americans have way too many breaks." And I was laughing. I'm like, "How many American radio shows have you done?" Because we actually have 25 minutes between each segment. We don't break them in quarters like most radio shows do. Where you have
That's pretty standard.
Yeah, I mean it's like we try to cram our breaks. There's a secret behind that, by the way. We cram them in a certain time frame, so those that download will know that they can at that time they can just boop 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 and then zip right through the breaks and get right back to the show. But one of the things I notice, Chris, is, and this is my evaluation of you. I'm going to turn the table a little bit. When you were giving the reading of me, your precision, the words in which you used were very precise. You didn't, my voice teacher, voice coach. Yes, everybody, I do have a voice coach. She's working with me. Don't get upset. She just started working with me. I'm at the straw exercise. And if you don't know what the straw exercise is, go look it up on YouTube. But one of the things that she even pointed out, like with me, was she's like, it's interesting because I can tell when you're interested with something because your voice changes and the words that you choose to use are more precise. And it's kind of weird because I picked that up on you when you were doing your evaluation of me, where your precision, you didn't use fill words. You didn't use unnecessary. You were very precise in what you're saying. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I have to tell you that a lot of people that I've spoken to say kind of the same thing when they feed back.
Yeah.
They say, I was expecting you to use a lot of general words or general descriptions, but it was the exact opposite.
Yeah.
And it's precision is one way to describe it. But there was there's a concentration thing that happens with me, and it's kind of like being in the zone when there's a composition that I'm rendering, and other people can say the same thing. I get into the zone when I'm creating a document for work or when I'm making a meal at supper time or whatever. And it's kind of the same thing. And yeah, precision is important, but for me, the guiding light, so to speak, is the name and the birth date, right? So as long as I have that as the centerpiece of the only thing that I want to know about what I'm talking about, that keeps me anchored into the realm. And the realm I speak of is the realm of analysis, where I'm really trying to see this 360 image of this personality in all its little nuances, right? And if I see what I see, I have to use the exact context to describe it. Otherwise, it's off. It's like if I say to you, if we're jamming or improvising and, I'm playing something in A minor, and you're playing something in A minor, but your guitar is out of tune, you're going to sound like crap, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to make me sound like crap, and we're both going to sound like it's going to be off. There's no intonation. The calibration is off, and the precision is going to be off, and it's just going to not be very accurate rendition of what it is we're trying to do. So I think, and I thank you for saying that too, because again, it validates the work, but the precision is no more different than someone else who gets into their zone trying to be a perfectionist, I guess, to do something right the first time, right?
Yeah, no, I understand. That's just an observation I saw. Now, I did want to roll back. You said that when you were in high school, when you were younger, you got into occultism. What's that about? What was that? Just the standard? Hey, I'm curious about this thing, and like I think all of us do. We pull out the Ouija board. We light the candles.
Like that. And I'm just going to preface that and say it wasn't like, the dark side, for the sake of the dark side. It was the literal interpretation of what occult means. It's a Latin word meaning hidden from view, or just hidden in general. Okay. And even that's why they use the word when, there's a lunar eclipse. It's an occultation. Right? So really...
use the classical term of occult, not the modern day term.
Exactly. Okay. That's correct. Exactly.
So you're more of a Stephen Curry, like an esoteric kind of.
Exactly. And it was that one teacher in high school who I remember literally in the hallway came up to me and he said, "Hey, I think you'll find this interesting." And I said, "What is it?" And he goes, "Just read it." He goes, "You don't have to give it back. Just read it." And it was just a bunch of weird, subjects about weird kinds of math and ancient philosophy and stuff. That was the primer. And when I started reading it, it was very easy to read. But what I discovered is I thought, who are these people? What's a philosopher? And I even remember saying to myself, philosophers, this is like loser stuff, right? Yeah. Like seriously, I was going like, why would I want to, read this? But then what the teacher was trying to instill in me is, hey, look, there was a whole bunch of people that came before us that were like thinkers. And I'm not saying you're a thinker, Chris, but just, read up on this and just kind of get outside your own head and just realize that there was a whole history to humanity that you might not have ever been exposed to. And he was correct. I was not. And that was really the big primer for me. And that's when I realized in a proper context, I thought, wow, there were people that were around like 3,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago. Wow, what was life like back then, right? Did people know how to do stuff? And, because when you're a teenager, you're assuming all kinds of things, and you'll probably be wrong on most counts until you read more.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what he did, that teacher. It was at the right time, the right subject matter. And that's when I realized that there was a whole bunch of hidden information that unless you go digging, you're not going to find it. Yeah. And that's when I got exposed to things like numerology, astrology, gematria, just, like early forms of geometry and astronomy, music. Because back then, you got to keep it in context too. During the time of Pythagoras' time, the influences of Egypt were very much in vogue, right? Mm-hmm. And that was recent modern history, right? So whatever concepts you were taught as a kid about science and math and astronomy and this thing that they called music, but they didn't really call it music. It was about tones, and it was used more for healing than anything else, I believe, at that time. Not everybody was exposed to this. Even with hieroglyphics, the way that they were communicating language was not normal, the way we would consider it. And I thought that was really bizarre, that, people didn't have letters, and that letters and numbers with ancient Chaldean, like in Sumeria, I think was the Enochian alphabet, the little shapes of what we call, I guess, characters in an alphabet were actually little glyphs or pictograms of star systems, if I recall correctly, which completely, like, I couldn't believe what they were saying in the same thing. And so you're telling me that the first alphabet was a bunch of people coding this stuff that was like star system squiggles, and that was like an alphabet. So that was the start of it all. Then I realized, there's these ancient alphabets. Oh, wow, what's that all about? That's when I realized, oh my God, there was a bunch of ancient civilizations. Well, what were those all about? And it just went on and on and on from there. But once I got into it, like a lot of people, it was very difficult to stop learning. Yeah. Right? And the fascination, it continues to this day, but in a more, I guess, refined manner. Like I'm a little bit more picky now. The stuff I kind of choose to give my attention to.
Well, we have limited time. I mean, that's the beauty between esoteric subject matter, is the fact that the more you learn, the more you want to learn. And I believe that there are certain individuals now that are tuned. How do I say that? Are tuned to learn that subject matter, and the other ones are more worried about what Kardashians are doing, or what, who's going to win whatever NFL game or whatever. But there's certain. And
exactly. And it depends again on the personality of the individual, right? Which is kind of like my life's work at this point, which is to perfect the analysis part, but at the same time to put more responsibility. And I was just saying this to a very close friend of mine the other day. I said, do you not want to be more responsible for the way you behave and to get rid of the stuff that's kind of holding you back? Yeah. And he goes, yeah, of course, but a lot of people, they don't know how to effectively unlearn bad habits, for starters, and we're all like that. Yeah. Right? But you got to start somewhere. And I mean, it's the same thing with liabilities. If you wake up one day and you do an analysis of what your assets are, the stuff that, you got in reserve, and that's, like the equivalent of a pile of money, or things that can improve your quality of life. Yeah, you want to keep that clearly in perspective and say, yeah, that's good. I think I want to keep that stuff, right? But then by the same token, when you look at, like if you're an accountant and you're looking at a ledger or a balance sheet and you see a bunch of liabilities and you start going and reviewing them all, do you not want to find a way to maybe reduce or eliminate or get rid of them? Yeah. Because that stuff is holding you back. And in fact, it's not only holding you back, it's holding everybody else back in your life who looks to you for, say, guidance or to be there for them. And it's holding, when you extrapolate from that, it's holding the whole world back. Because in some way, we're all doing that. Everything is out of whack. And there's a reckoning that I think that's coming fast and approaching, and there's no more time to be kicking the can down the road, or whatever that saying is. And it's a weird time that we're living in, and I'm just feeling this unraveling as well as a quickening, where we have to come to our senses, and nothing can be more startling to get your attention to what I'm talking about. Like you made the comment about the Kardashians or TV or whatever, right? Or whatever's the latest trend in fashion. And I get that too, because we all live in the world. But the other day, I thought to myself, is anybody paying attention to any of those rogue asteroids, that are like swirling around and just come in and just like, smoke us like in a nanosecond. Yeah. Like everything could be over. And then I started thinking these thoughts from time to time, and I never used to start thinking like this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
right. So I'm thinking, well, what's going on?
It's funny that you said that, because I did the interview today with Gerard Artisan, and he talked about the mystics, the masters, and the communication and everything that's going on. And then last night, you talk about rogue asteroids. Last night we had Joseph Reyna on 5 Eagles was on, and he's saying the same thing. He's getting messages to look up at the sky this weekend because apparently Mirai. Now, it's funny synchronicity because I got an instant message on my Facebook from unknown. That's who sent it to me, and it said, "Look up into the sky this weekend, meteorite," and it's the same thing. And then you just said it again, so there's your trifecta. There's your three, and it's amazing. But Gerard was saying that the masters, the keepers, that are here, and I'll get that show out later on this week. It was kind of one that we put into the can just in case I get sick or something happens as a backup show. But he was saying, don't worry, we're at the very, very beginning phase of Aquarius. We just left Pisces, the age of Pisces, and now we're moving. Okay. So we're in a transition phase into the very beginning of Aquarius. So that may be why there's a little unbalance there, a little edginess.
Well, okay. See, you've now just triggered a recall, some kind of a recollection or a memory, but I didn't quite remember a factoid until you just brought it up. I mentioned, I think, the harmonic convergence thing that I learned about years later after 1988. Yeah. And my understanding, if I remember correctly, it happened sometime in 1988.
Yes, it did.
In the summertime, and it was in the fall shortly thereafter that I started, just thinking differently about life. So was that not really when the early version of Aquarius was came in? And believe me, I'm not an astrologer. I could phone up and read up on it, but
August it happened in August 16th to 17th in 1987 is when that happened. The age of Aquarius, I think it could be.
I could look it up on the.
No, I'm going to look it up. I'm going to put it in the ever so knowledgeable Googler. So it is. So it happens every 26,000 years, precision, or 21. So it's, and this is a thing, but NASA actually said that there's 13 zodiac signs, not 12.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I read that in one of my books a while back too, and how there's a hidden one, and I think it's called, starts with an O.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Oh well, I just actually here I got it right here. Because I reported on it the other day, yesterday, and on the show. And let me pull up my notes. And here we go. It's
OCE something.
Yeah.
But
hold on, I want to get it because I think it's important.
Well, no, it is important because. It's more important than I was even thinking about before, because it dovetails with the forecasts that I've also been doing every week moving forward.
Ophiuchus.
Audiocast. Oh, that's it.
Ophiuchus.
But let's start with a no.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Right. So take into account that for years we thought there was only 12 signs, and now we find out there's 13. Although in the esoteric teachings that I've been reading about for years, they were always mentioning this 13.
There's always 13. Yes.
There's always 13, right. Well, the Mayans, interestingly, also believed in base 13 as a sequential numbering system, which I can't remember the guy's name now. Oh, my God. Famous, the guy, the go-to guy.
Was it Crowley?
No. He was the British fellow, but this fellow was Carlos. My God, I can't believe I can't remember the guy's name. But he's there. I have a couple of his books. But he did amazing life's work on base 13 and everything the Mayans calculated with that, including the relevance to the current timeline we're in. And I think maybe that's what the big takeaway is too. This particular year, even though 2012 is a couple of years ago. Most people were expecting the world to end then.
Yeah.
But I don't think the world's going to end per se, according to the Mayans. It'll just be a reinvention of perhaps the calendar system or some astronomical event that will clearly demarcate an old way going this way, finished, and a new one being ushered in, that kind of a thing.
See,
astronomical.
I'm a humanist kind of belief when it comes to the Mayan calendar, and I don't know yet, and I've got to get an expert on here to show me. My thing is everything's got to end. Are those guys are going to be, carving forever? And, the Mayan calendar, I mean, my firm belief is basically they said, you know what? We've gone 2,000 years into the future. That's enough.
Well, just some arbitrary thing that some priest came up with, like a policy.
Yeah, just kind of like, hey, look, by the time, 2,000 years from now, they'll probably have something else that they can put a calendar on. I don't know. I'm tired of chipping. We got to get this work out the door. You've been chiseling at that stone for 5 years now. It's time to. That's right. It's time to
release it.
It's time to get it out there, guys. Funny? Like they said. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, but the Mayans, they were like experts astronomers, right?
Yes.
And just like the Egyptian astronomers, just like in every culture, you could say that astronomical data, if it was compared, it was actually quite accurate.
Yeah.
And the Mayans in particular, I think, had this star mapping tech or some kind of a charting ability that is just phenomenal.
Well,
because they had the repeatability scientific method thing down pat.
Yeah, the precision. But you know what though? Think about it. All right, so you build this temple, and like I said, I go back to the Occam's razor. Let's put it in a human form. So you go back to you have these individuals who basically have the rest of their society that feeds them, right? Their deities or their shamans. These guys aren't, they sit around, they eat, they sleep, and at night they look at the stars, and that's all they do. They didn't have TV, they didn't have all the distractions. They didn't have to worry about feeding themselves because they had people that did that for them. So obviously they're going to have a lot of time on their hand. And I know that's a very simplistic viewpoint, but I think that's just basically, I mean, if I could sit and stare at the stars all night long, over 20, 30, 40 years, I could probably draw a pretty clear map as well.
Yeah, well, you know what? The only thing I'll push back on that is the following, that I think even in ancient times, the people that were kind of in charge of the tribe or the community, I think they appointed or handpicked people to do certain jobs, not out of nepotism or whose kid you were, but more along the lines of natural aptitudes and things like that. And I think if you were perceived or you had a tendency to be analytical or a good student, that kind of thing, then you were taught a bunch of stuff by elders, that kind of thing. And also the word Maya, and I remember this just from memory, I believe it means navigator. So if you had the job of, interpreting and plotting and calculating, data points in the sky and referring to previous records that others kept from, like 1,000 years ago or whatever, that were signed off as being accurate, and you had to build on them, et cetera, and that was a serious job, or like the profession or whatever, however it was described during those times, then it was probably a really serious endeavor. But I think what I'm trying to get at is the relationship to the current timeline we're in.
Yeah.
If Maya means navigator, then what on earth were they navigating? Like what? Were they navigating the planet? Like our evolution, their own souls, their own personal development? Like these are the questions that come up when I think of the word navigator associated with a people.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I don't have the answers. I'm just making a bunch of questions because this is what comes to mind. But I do believe that we are in not end times the way the biblical references, but definitely an astronomical event.
Sure.
Of such a magnitude is going to present itself that will be irrefutable. Unless it's some hoax or an illusion, it's going to be as real as anything, and we'll know that. Well,
you have the pole shift, which could be coming. The sun just shifted its pole, just shifted its poles. So you have the pole shift, which is, it's way behind schedule, if there's such a thing. But scientists believe that it's several several thousand years behind. You have, like I said, you're going from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. And each age roughly is 2,160 years. So you figure we're at 2015 since the birth of Christ. So you subtract that. So the birth of Christ, and that's the belief system of some of these higher magnitude beings, is that each age you have a deity or a master or a shaman that appears. And, so they're believing that he is here now. And interesting conversation. I got to get that out there to people. I might just put it out as a bonus show, and because I thought it was going to be a filler show, but Gerard, just incredible conversation that we had.
Yeah, no, it's a timely topic too.
Absolutely.
Even though 2012 has come and gone, it doesn't mean that what was prophesized isn't coming to pass. Yep. It's just like an octave or two later,
Yeah, exactly.
And I use it like a musical term because octaves are very important as a concept for people to get.
In the scope of 2,160 years, what's a few years?
What's a few years?
What's exactly. A few years? Plus or minus 10%, right? So,
like a sharp and a flat in the musical.
Exactly. So, Chris, my friend, I hate to say it, but we are officially out of time. I actually blew the break because I wanted to continue to talk to you. I can do that after hours like this, but we unfortunately are out of time, my friend. Is there anything that we need to discuss, or obviously your website? Where do people find you? How do they reach you? How do they get readings from you?
Well, the quickest, fastest way to just find out what I do is to go to Alchemy World, like the world we live in, .com. And it's a very simple site. It's got a couple of links, and there's 3 different things that I do. I do a weekly audio cast, but I'm not as brave as you to do a live version of it. I have to sit and contemplate and assemble my thoughts in an organized, I guess, more relaxed manner than a live setting. And I do commend you for doing that because it's no easy feat to do a live show by any stretch.
Now, I
do with audio.
I'm on alchemyworld.com.
Yes.
And it takes me directly to either subscribe, privacy, or about.
That's it. Yeah, that's the front. That's the literal thing. And I'm telling you, you go to the about, it'll give you a quick snapshot of what it is. The privacy, I have to spell out a very strict privacy policy there.
Sure.
And when you click on subscribe, that takes you into the rabbit hole, so to speak, where I have 3 offerings. I have the audio cast, which is a subscription-based model. And it's, like $10 to sign up and then $1 a week. And there's no advertising. I don't sell names to anybody. And that's really the big primer. I want in those forecasts to help educate people, to teach them how to learn to profile themselves. That's really the big intent behind that. And I also give them forecasts that they can learn about and work with and make them work for them in their favor. And then if anybody wants a custom profile done, there's 2 other options, and there's one for the workplace as well. Sure. But that's it. That's all I do. It's very simple, very straightforward, and you'll be in and out of that website in like no time at all to get a heads up.
No flash. I mean, right to the point. I mean, that's awesome. Right to the point. Yeah, right to the point. And that's it.
It works for me.
Yep. And we have, and like I said, you can actually go to the Midnight Ocean for the listeners out there. As you guys all know, if you are a Midnight Ocean listener, you can go to Chris's author page on our site, and then our guest page, I should say, not author, but guest page on our site. And then there's a link right there that will then take you to Chris's site. Now, I think it's very important. You said that you don't give financial, you don't give relationship, and you don't do politics. I just want to make sure everybody knows that.
I don't do politics. I don't do religion. Okay? I think everybody has their own private needs to keep certain things, to themselves. So I don't discuss politics, religion, or financial things, right?
Yeah.
But if someone comes to me and they want me to do a profile on themselves or their relationship or, their kids, if it's the parents, obviously, I'm not going to say no to a mother when she wants some career counseling on her kid, right? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I stretch it a little bit, but that's about it. But my bottom line is I want to help people understand their personality and how to convert weaknesses into strengths and how to just really learn to be yourself and to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
don't be something that you're not.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I've learned it's so hard to keep that facade up for so long. So you just, we learn.
Yeah. We learn through trial and error, right? And if you don't know something, you don't know. But once you learn something and you do know it and it resonates and there's some authenticity and some truth behind it and you know it is and things are starting to feel good and you're feeling integrated, how can that be a bad thing?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's actually the latest filter I put on my life is just be who you are, right? Just, and it's, don't offend people. Don't be mean, because a lot of people will interpret that. Oh, okay. I can tell someone that, if the wife asks me if the dress fits or whatever, I can say, no, honey, it doesn't fit or whatever. Don't be mean about it. Don't, choose your words.
Without getting a divorce.
But you don't have to lie in business or whatever. Just tell them the truth. To say, look, this is what we're
exactly. And learn to bring that version of yourself to everything that you do.
Yeah. I agree. Well, thank you, my friend. Thank you, Chris, for joining us tonight. Any parting words you want to give to our listenership, our audience?
Just stay focused on whatever changes are going on in your life and try to be agile and flexible moving forward, and everything will be fine. But just don't give in to the lower forces of ego and willpower and stuff like that, because we'll get in trouble doing that. Just there's a big change happening, and we just have to go from one to the other, and everything will be fine.
Yeah, everything will be fine. I think that's the key thing, is let people know.
Yeah.
And everybody I'm talking to, especially in the esoteric side of the realm, is like everything will be fine. Well, good night. Get some sleep, and I'll be in touch with you, my friend.
All right. Take care. All the best, and thanks for the time. It was very.
It was wonderful. Fun. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it was fun.
Very much.
Take care.
Yep. Bye now. So there you go, Chris. Wow, hit the wrong button. Chris Gogos joining us. Wow, what a show! I thoroughly enjoyed that one. And guys, I try not to make it all about me, but I was the guinea pig. I volunteered instead of picking someone in the audience. And I'm sure if you guys reach out to Chris, if you go out to alchemyworld.com, tell him that you heard about him on the show here tonight. I can't guarantee, but he might be able to help you out if you guys want to make it about you and learn. But, understand, be respectful. The guy's got to make a living, got to pay the bills, and has a day and night job. I'm sure it's a full-time job, especially with his client list. But what a show. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I hope you guys did too. And yes, I will put out the interview that I had with Gerard Artson today. I'll have to wait a couple days or whatever to get it out there, but I will get it. It was a full interview. We did actually a full 2-hour interview. Great conversation that we had. Outstanding conversation. And like I said, we were originally going to record it and use it as a filler so I can take a day off or whatever. But you know what? I'm going to go ahead and burn it. I'm going to go ahead and get it out there, because I think the message that he has for you is important. And, tonight's message was important. As you can see, there are higher things at play here. And there are individuals who definitely are tapped into those higher things. Well, like all good shows, unfortunately, we do have to say goodnight. I wish I could stay up with you guys all night long. But you heard it. You heard it from Chris. He was like, hey, you got to get your sleep. That's very important. But it was crazy. It was crazy. Thank you, Sentinel. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. Thank you, Becky. Thanks for joining the show. Wow. Well, I think we're going to pull this ship into the dock. We're going to unload, let you guys jump off. And remember, though, please tell your friends, your family about us. That's how we're going to grow this show. We want to grow. You know, there's a lot of tricks to getting numbers. We want to grow this organically. We want our listeners to be our listeners. We want them to come here. So we're not employing any of those tricks to increase our numbers. We're just doing it the old-fashioned way. Boots on the ground and a mouths a talking. But what a great show. Some things I will tell you, some things for the good are coming down the pipe. Working with, I have my voice and diction coach. So you guys are probably going to see some changes. Yeah, I'm doing the straw exercise. Try blowing through a straw, a cocktail straw, not a normal straw. It's all about building muscle. I think I need to build any more, but, oh, well. Now, if you can't be good and you don't want to be bad, I think the best solution for you guys is, as my good friend Ed Roman would say, be love. And with that, as you guys know, that's how we end the show here at the Midnight Ocean Radio Show and Podcast. Join us on the web at www.themidnightocean.com.
was back. He had the knack for pushing music like a heart attack. Acapulco shirts and his goatee. Amplifiers glowing like a sound key. Flying in the face of conformity. Cause the Jack in the Shack is the one with the knack. I wish the Wolfman was back. He be taking no shit and he be taking no flack. I wish the Wolfman was back. You can bet on this, you can bet on that, yeah.
Hey, you got no love in your heart, man. Don't you know if you got love in your heart, that's gonna make everything alright in the world. Send in the Wolfman Jack for president campaign constitution, baby. I want you to turn your radio up real loud now. And the lights in the room get dim and the music goes slip and slide right into your soul and your mind. And you gonna know how it feels to flow.
I wish the Wolfman was back. He be taking no shit and he be taking no flack. I wish the Wolfman was back. You can bet on this, you can bet on that. I wish the Wolfman was back. He be posting the need and he be sharing the feed. I wish the Wolfman was back. He had the knack for pushing music like a heart attack. I wish the Wolfman was back. Yes I do, yes I do, yes I do. I wish the Wolfman was back.
This is the Midnight Ocean with Jeff Norton on the Paranormal State Radio Network.